In a typical year, we'd be hearing all about the teams heading to France in preparation for the world's marquee 24-hour race. And unless you've been living under a rock, you know this is not a typical year. And we have to wait until September for the real thing. So sim racing once again steps in to fill the hearts and desires of those that want to see some racing at Le Mans. And man, do we have a star-studded crowd today. Welcome to the Global Sim Racing channel. Today we are bringing you the Portugal Racing League's 2.4 hour of Le Mans. Manning the booth today, you'll find myself, Adam Young. Alongside, I'll have Devin Henry and Peter Mackay. Making sure we get on the air and pointing us in the right direction, you'll find Joe P. As always, GSRC uses cameras set up and tuned up by Dougie Beard. As mentioned, and as I'm sure you've noticed, we are at Circuit de la Sarthe today, one of the handful of tracks across the world that needs little introduction, but we're going to give you one anyway. Let's go over to today's track guide.
Welcome to Le Mans. When you talk about legendary circuits, this is a place that stands among the most famous in the world. Part permanent road course, part temporary street circuit, it traipses through the countryside just south of the city where it gets its namesake. Its size matches its reputation as well, clocking it at 8.5 miles, which equates to roughly 13.5 kilometers. However, when you take into account that it's split by only 33 turns, the frighteningly fast nature of this circuit becomes clear. Most of the corners have been added over the century of history it's experienced, but many have become renowned and respected. The two turns at the opposite ends of the massively long Mulsanne Straight play equally important roles. Tertre Rouge requires a great exit in order to not lose massive amounts of time, while Mulsanne Corner takes bravery and precision in order to brake as late as possible and keep opponents from passing you on the way in. There's also hair-raising moments like the tricky entry to Indianapolis, or the close walls along the bridge section in the Porsche curves. To win here, drivers will need a very low downforce setup, a good sense of strategy, and heaps of bravery. The 24 Hours of Le Mans is the crown jewel of endurance racing, which many drivers dream of someday winning and many fans flock to witness in person. Once you've driven the track here on iRacing, it's easy to see why.
So there is the look at Le Mans, and let's throw it over to Devin for some more track info. Devin?
Well, Adam, like you mentioned, this is a track that really doesn't need much introduction, but for those of you guys who do need a little bit of a reminder, we are running the entire track, maintaining 33 corners in a single lap here at Le Mans, and this is just a fun track at almost 8.5 miles. 2.4 hours is the distance today, and we have a plethora of different kinds of vehicles, 3 different categories, racing for a victory today, if you will. Boy, always gotta love this visit off to France in 2.4 hours. This is going to feel like an endurance race, even though it's not the full 24 hours like we'd like. But nonetheless, even in sim racing, this can be a course that is absolutely physically draining.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I've done my fair share of 2.4 hour races here solo. And I'll tell you, you do get a little bit tired at the end of that 2.5 hours. Well, almost 2.5 hours there. And Patrick, many of our viewers may not be familiar with the Portugal Racing League. I know we've broadcasted a few of their events here on GSRC before. But what can you tell us about them? Give them a little bit of an introduction. Okay, so we'll see what's going on there with Peter. But we'll go ahead and get that introduction here in a few minutes. But let's go over to Devin and where we get some of the names of today's events. We got a star-studded crowd out there. Tell us a little bit about what we're expecting.
Well, we're expecting a lot of fun, a lot of great drivers. We mentioned about 2.5 hours here over the course of these 33 corners. We have 3 categories, the LMP1, which includes the Audi R18 and the Porsche 919, the LMP2, which we only have 1 car in, but also the GTE category is going to be absolutely stacked. BMWs, Ferraris, Fords, Porsche 911s. It's going to be a lot of fun. And you do get a little bit of a gimme here in the fact that you do have 60 incident points that you can go through. But probably the most important thing when it comes to sim racing, no fast repairs in this 2.4 hours. Maintaining your car is going to be such a huge priority. Just a small hit in the wall can completely destroy your vehicle, and there's no way to repair it except for sitting in the pits.
All right, and I think we've got Devin back here. Devin, can you tell us a little bit about the Portugal race? Peter, I'm so sorry. I told you I was going to do that on this broadcast. I told you I was going to do.
Not a problem at all, Adam. So, the Portugal Racing League was founded back in April 2019, and it's a community for all Portuguese sim racing lovers. And they now have over 300 drivers enrolled in their variety of competitions across many sim racing platforms like F1 2019, Project Cars 2, and here on iRacing as well. And you may recognise, for fans of real-world racing, you may recognise a few names of some very significant drivers. One in particular who's been out on track already in his LMP1 Audi is Philippe Albuquerque, who actually raced with Audi in the LMP1 class back in 2014 and 2015. So he knows the track and the car very well indeed.
Yeah, he does, and that's going to be a fun one to watch. There's some other names that we're going to get into. We're still waiting to see if some of them actually make it to today's session before we get all excited about who may or may not be out there here for this afternoon's event. We got about 6 minutes left to go in qualifying. We got Kirez on the track right now, the Iberian, running in 9th place in the GTE class. So we got the GTE leaderboard right there for you. So for qualifying, these guys are getting 4 laps, and I do believe that it is not open. I don't think they have to worry about anybody else out there to be running those laps. So that's kind of helping them out just a little bit. I don't think you can take advantage of any kind of draft or all that. So 30 minutes of that qualifying. Stick with Kira's here. I believe Luis Monteiro is getting ready to come across the line. We'll see if he's able to improve his position for 14th. That's one thing at Le Mans, and I know, Peter, I think you've got a little bit of experience racing here. Devin, I don't know if you do, but off tracks in certain parts of this track can be a little easy to get.
They certainly are, yes. It can be very, very strict on the track limits, and what we're likely to see at certain stages of this race, that if the track limits are abused, and you really don't have to tread over the circuit outline very much, and sometimes iRacing will administer a slowdown penalty, which can be really, really damaging depending how strong the breach of track limits is. But usually it's at least a second or two where the driver has to slow down, and can really cause quite a lot of damage to the lap time. So do watch out for that. Le Mans is such a unique circuit. Of course, a big part of the circuit is on public roads, and part of the circuit is purpose built. So some of the parts of the circuit where the curbing and things like that are quite tricky sometimes to just sneak over track limits. Also, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Le Mans circuit has been given quite a significant visual upgrade on the recent iRacing build. I was running some laps earlier just to figure out the fuel mileage for these cars, and they've definitely, the iRacing team have done a great job further improving the realism of this Le Mans circuit.
Yeah, and of course, Le Mans was one of the, it was a big deal just a couple of years ago, so it was already kind of one of the more modernly scanned tracks, and of course they continue to improve upon it. It just does look absolutely fantastic. And you get back to the incident count too. So what that is going to be here for today is you do have a penalty at 30 incidents, and then you'll have another one if you get up to 50 incidents, and then once you hit 60, you're done for the day. You're out. You're disqualified from the session. There are no fast repairs as well. I can't remember if we, in fact, did do that. Hey, if you want some live timing and scoring for today's race, head on over to gsrc.tv, and you'll be able to see all of that just as we do right here on the broadcast as far as that live timing and scoring. And Devin, I kind of mentioned it a little bit ago. I'm not sure of what your personal experience is here racing at Le Mans. Have you been able to turn any laps here?
Well, the number one issue with me is that I don't have a lot of experience, purely because I don't have one of the prime traits that you need to run well here, and that is patience, guys. 4-minute laps, 33 corners, having to memorize how you need to hit all 33 corners on this track. Probably the most difficult part for me, and so it's hard to get some quality time on this track and actually learn this track. And of course, running for almost 2.5 hours, in my mind, that might be one of the biggest challenges that these drivers are going to have to overcome, is running 2.5 hours on 33 corners, remembering to do it correctly. And I know that a lot of these guys do not like to run that preference line, the line of best fit, whatever you want to call it, that shows you gas and braking. And so, yeah, you better have all 33 corners memorized if you want to run around here at a very good pace and try to win this 2.4-hour race.
And I can tell you from that personal experience I was talking about earlier with 2.4-hour races, you get kind of to the end of this. Now, granted, for me, I was always running them mostly in the evenings. Down some of the longer straights, you actually sometimes have to, kind of keep yourself awake a little bit. It's almost like running Daytona in the middle of the night down the long straights there. It's like you just kind of have to struggle to keep focus, but it also goes into the patience. Part of patience is trying to keep focus. So that's going to be interesting too. And I guess I'm going to go ahead and talk about it since it's kind of more my cup of tea. We'll bring up the weather here real quick, and I'm going to get plugged with it anyway, so I might as well just do it. 85 degrees is going to be the air temperature. Track temperature is at 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and winds are not going to be an issue. But with that hot track temperature here, Peter, that's going to make things a little bit slick, particularly in some of the slower speed corners.
Yes, it will do. And the one thing about Le Mans is it's such a unique circuit. It has so many unique facets to it. It's 8.5 miles long, and there's large parts of it where you need a car with very low downforce. Of course, going down the straight, you want to have as little downforce as possible to make the car nice and make it slip through the air and get higher speed. But of course, when you come into sections like the Porsche curves, which this number 43 Ferrari on screen right now is just negotiating that now, and coming into Corvette corner as well, that is somewhere which is so dependent on aerodynamics. So for these drivers, one of the most important parts is, and of course I'm sure a lot of them will have a lot of experience driving around this track on iRacing, it's so important to get that compromise in setup just right for how you like, because you can't have a car that's too draggy because you'll lose far too much time on the straights. So really you've kind of got to compromise. But if you've got a car that's in a very low downforce setup, the Porsche curves in the last sector where you're really putting a lot of demand on the car, that can be a real tightrope to walk. And especially, as you say, with a higher track temperature, that's only going to make it more difficult.
All right, so let's go ahead and pull up the grid here for today. Qualifying is over. We're just about ready to kick off a almost 2.5-hour race here. It'll be 2 hours, 25 minutes. We'll read the grid 10 at a time. We've got 9 LMP1s out here. James Thomas is going to be starting on the pole there with a 3-minute, 20.1 second lap. Hugo Prieto will be starting in second alongside him. Leonardo Marquez in third. Yao Alfonso in fourth. Alexandre Martins will be in fifth position in row 3. Miguel Almeida starting alongside him. Yao Coelho starting in seventh. And Felipe Albuquerque making his start here today. Yes, that is the Felipe Albuquerque of multiple real life sports car leagues fame. He'll be starting in eighth in row 4. Ricardo Martins in row 9. And starting on the pole with the GTEs will be Carlos Dieguez.
Starting off in 11th place for this race today overall, Ricardo Friurga. In 12th will be Nuno Henriquez. Behind him will be Manuel Vasconcelos. Luis Monteiro starts next to him. Diego Paez Sopia. In row 8, Pedro Pimenta. In 16th, Tomas Montirno. In 17th, Antiano Viexe. In 18th, Ru Fernando Quiores. In 19th, and Yao Fiajo in 20th.
In row 11, in 21st position, will be Nuno Macedo. Followed beside him on row 11 will be Ricardo M. Cardoso. Next up in 23rd will be Michael Mendes and Celio Mendes in 24th. In 25th will be Marco Mendes with Flavio Saturnino. In 27th will be Tiago Neves Pereira beside Diego de Souza. 29th will be Leandro Castro, and 30th Felipe Gusha.
All right, and I'll go ahead and round out the rest of the field here real quick. Pedro Souza starting in 31st. Luis Pedro Costa in 32nd. Row 16, row 17 is going to go to Pedro Casal. That's another LMP1 out there. Hugo Brando at 34th. Antonio Reis 35th inside of row 18. Pedro Martins at 36th. Hugo Carvalho in 37th. And C.E. Lopez in 38th. You see Daniel Morad actually on the list. I'm taking a look to see if they did in fact get back into session and grid. I do not see him out there. He was going to be the lone HPD in LMP2, but it doesn't look like we're going to have to worry about that class here for today. Nuno Piera in 40th. And looking to see if we've got anybody else. Row 21, if you, Francisco Torres, Yal Magalhães, Hugo Silva, and Diego Silva round out the field. Some of these cars not actually making the grid here for today. And with the laws being as big as it is, we'll try to sort that out here as we go along. So fittingly, the Porsche making its way through the Porsche curves and then the Corvette curves. And once it heads over to the Ford chicane, it's kind of like, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and pull over and get off the track, and we'll let these screaming LMP1s get going. The guys are maintaining a gap between the classes, it looks like. So LMP1s will start in front of the GTEs by a couple of seconds as they begin to form up through the Ford chicanes. And we're going to get the green flag here just momentarily as the pace car gets ready to pull off the track. Of course, the tricolor jets with the smoke behind them, simulating the French flag. Of course, that's their flight demonstration team, much like how in the United States we've got the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds, and there in Canada they've got the Red Arrows. Well, here today, we got our own slide form as demonstration. We got the LMP1s taking the green flags. It looks like James Thomas getting a great jump, but Hugo Preto right behind him. They all get away clean, at least for the most part. A little bit of side-by-side going back to Felipe Albuquerque, going into the Dunlop curves. Let's go over to Peter in the GTEs.
So we're waiting as the GTEs. We've got two Ferrari 488 GTEs just tearing away at the front, getting a really big jump coming into Dunlop chicane now and through the iconic Dunlop bridge. So it's two Ferraris leading away, followed by two Porsches.
Yeah, and it looked like João Cleo had a little bit of a problem, so he did spin it in the Dunlop curves, but he was able to get straightened out before the GTEs got to him, so they did not have to deal with that. It does look like all the GTEs are getting through the Dunlop curves okay, moving back through the field. Yeah, we do look good. Those LMP1s, though, are making their first trip down into the chicanes there along that long straightaway down the back that got broken up for the chicanes for safety reasons a number of years back. Let's take a look at what the speeds are getting here right off the bat. And we're on the first lap. I'm already seeing James Thomas approaching and now surpassing 200 miles an hour. 205 miles an hour before he has to brake. Let's go ahead and go back to P5 as we're looking at a battle here. As Felipe Albuquerque, he's making moves early as Alexandra Martins actually has to, kind of almost block just a little bit going there into the chicane. But man, Felipe Albuquerque might be one to watch here early, Devin.
Absolutely, and obviously having that pro experience helps as well as we look on board of Martin's car here. And of course, we start to get a bunch up in the middle here, but pretty excited to have a very clean start for all the classes, most all the cars, although a little bit off track there. And into the dirt goes Martin, who was up almost trying to fight inside the top 5.
All right, let's go check in on the GTEs here real quick, make sure we're not missing any battles back there, as I know those guys are just getting going. Looks like first and second are set pace here. And actually got to go all the way back pretty deep in the field with Nuno Macedo and Flavio Sortino back there. They're going to get themselves sorted out here. But GTEs, there's definitely, I think there's about twice as many GTEs as we got LMP1s here. Here in Preto might have had a problem. Going back to him here, he falls out. I believe he was in second place. Let's see if we can find out what happened to him. Oh, it looks like going into Indianapolis, he did not like how he was set up and decided to go ahead, ditch, and go straight. So he best decided to save the car there.
It's a very common mistake there coming into Indianapolis, especially on lap 1 when the tyres are still cold on these cars. Even in this four-wheel drive Audi, it just looks like he maybe just rubbed the grass there on the left-hand side and just outbraked himself. It's such a typical mistake to make in these cars as well. And particularly with these LMP1 cars, these are really the most sophisticated race cars that have ever been manufactured, these LMP1 hybrid machines. And the drivers have the option to use the electronic power boost and to operate that manually. And I think that's Felipe Albuquerque in the 7 car. He's had a little bit of an off-track altercation there as well. So yeah, these LMP1 cars, they have a certain amount of energy that they can deploy manually throughout each lap, and sometimes if you use a lot more energy down one particular straight, you can sometimes make it very easy to miss your braking point, just like there at Indianapolis. And that's an unusual mistake from Felipe Albuquerque there, coming out the final chicane, just hopping over the curbs and getting it loose. That's a collector's item, seeing Felipe Albuquerque make a mistake like that.
It seemed like he just had a little bit of wheel hop there going through the 4 chicanes. And, those LMP1s are so high powered that, and obviously the driver assist, traction control, and everything else on them is pretty good. But there's not much that can compensate for a wheel hop and all that wheel spin. It just sends you right around. And just about any car you can possibly imagine. As we got the third place battle here in the GTEs on your screen. Manuel and Luis going at the United Kingdom and the Ireland driver, followed by the France driver. So even though this is the Portugal Racing League, it is a rather diverse crowd out there. Of course, we have mostly Iberians, but we do have a few other regions represented as well. James Thomas right now leading LP1s. He's from the Northwest Club, so somewhere in the Northwest United States you'll find James Thomas. And, of course, we do have the Frenchman out there with Gio Alfonso as well. So there'll be some guys that we'll keep an eye out there, see if they can make a play in the Portugal Racing League here for today. As we've now crossed the first couple of minutes of the race, see up there in the top left will be the time counter. Once we get past halfway, that should go to how much time actually, that's already on how much time we have left, excuse me, there. So, but seeing some big leads here early in both the LMP1 and also the GTE is the first place guys are just pretty much setting sail here, Devin.
Yeah, specifically looking at Thomas in the LP1 class, he's already up by almost 8 seconds, and that's great because in both classes you have cases like this where there's just a pack of drivers right now going at it, and you got to know how to conserve. We've seen a couple guys bail off the track now already. Remember, there is no fast repairs. So if you destroy your car, what are we, 20 minutes in, less than that, 10 minutes into the race, I mean, that's going to be really tough to come back from. So in these giant clusters of cars right here, you have to be so careful. This is a battle for 15th. Everyone running and gunning. Be careful with your car. No need to go overboard right now and potentially ruin the rest of your race.
Exactly. It is still an endurance event, even though it's not a large scale or a 24-hour race. If you're trying to do this solo, yeah, it's all about maintaining that patience and not crashing your car. And unlike the 24-hour race, you don't have the time to make up a whole lot of lost ground. As we're looking at Mendez right now, riding on board with the roof cam there set up by Dougie Beard. Looking at him trying to make that pass. He's going to be to the inside, I think, when he comes out of that. That should give him the advantage there, and yeah, he'll go ahead and clear him there. So that is another pass for position. You just see the hornet's nest right now of GTE cars, Peter.
Yeah, this is GTE. This is a very good simulation of what GTE is like in the real world as well. Of course, with the balance of performance regulations that are implemented in the GT category, the competition is so close and so fiercely competed between so many varieties of car. We've got a mid-engine twin-turbo Ferrari. We've got technically a mid-engine Porsche, which is a little bit more rear balanced, but actually it's a mid-engine Porsche, which is quite unusual. We've got one sole Ford, twin-turbo mid-engine Ford, and we've got a front-engine BMW, all racing together on track. And that is really what GT racing is all about. Now, just to mention on strategy for these GT cars, because the GT cars, They, on a full tank of fuel, they can go for about 1 hour on a full tank of fuel. And of course, we have a 2 hour and 25-minute race today. Big contact there.
Looking at the Ferrari there.
It's good to see. Very typical incident again. Coming into Porsche curves, you see cars trying to go too wide through there. That is a little bit silly at this stage of the race.
We've already seen one retiree earlier on. We'll get to that here in a moment. But we see here that 42 machine trying to look at that's Tomas Monteiro. He's going to go ahead and cut down, and there's a bumper there. And there goes the Iberian off into the sand trap, but he's able to get it righted and back on the track. Saying the retiree that we had just a few minutes ago, we're not going to be able to go back. It's probably going to be too far back, but it was Nuno Macedo. Ended up putting his Porsche on the lid, so he is going to be out for the rest of the day. Let's go up to the LMP1s. I got a little bit of a battle here shaping up in the top 10 for P7. Alexandra Martins, followed by Hugo Prieto. Hugo trying to make up a little bit of ground, but it looks like he's going to make another mistake. He's back off into the gravel. All that ground he made up after his early going through Indianapolis, he's going to have to make all that up again. He slides off and puts that LMP1 in the dirt. I think a lot of people don't realize these LMP1s, they can be a little bit of a handful to drive, even with the driver assist that they have. And it's pretty easy to sometimes make a mistake there, Devin.
Well, they have so much speed, and this track is just so flat. If you do make that time mistake, there's nothing there to help you. And now you mentioned making up all the ground in the first place, now all the way to the back of this LMP1 class, and now outside the top 10 overall. And I think that this race might feel like 3 hours to him, as he now has to make his way back up through his class again.
All right, let's go back to the GTE class, and battle shaping up right now for P4 there. So that's Nuno Henriquez and David Sancio. And once again, forgive me if I'm mispronouncing these names, but about 0.6 of a second between them here right now, Peter.
Yeah, it's really close battle, and actually it's hard to even believe this already, that we're not a million miles away from, even on a track this long, we're not too far away from the fastest LMP1 car coming up behind this very busy GT field. And I think for the battle at LMP1, it's going to be really critical for the race winner to manage that traffic correctly. Of course, at Le Mans, there's plenty of places where you can pass lap cars very, very easily, especially with the LMP1 cars. They have that boost that they can deploy each lap, and of course you can use that whenever you want. So sometimes if you've got to get past a GT car quickly, you can use maximum boost and just burst past them. And when these LMP1 cars with their four-wheel drive systems and their instant electric power along with the internal combustion engine, the acceleration is just mind-blowing. So watch for that, and that traffic management can be so important. Of course, if you're the GT car as well, being able to hold your line and maintain your pace while those LMP1 cars come down is going to be a real challenge too.
And let's actually go ahead and leave this battle. I want to go up here to second place right now in the GTEs. And with Carlos Dieguez and Ricardo Ferraria here. And they've got themselves a tight battle going. And I believe this is for second place here in the GTEs. That they were within nose to tail here just a moment ago. And now working their way through the Ford chicanes onto the front straightaway and toward the Dunlop curve. This is one that I really feel like, Devin, that Ricardo, it seems like he has an advantage right now in the back half of the track as far as between these two Ferraris.
Yeah, and of course we talked about how long this track is and where, of course, obviously you can't make mistakes in any part of this track. And being so early on in the race, it is nice to have the lead, though. You look at the LMP1 class, already a 12-second advantage. That makes you just feel so good not having to deal with anyone behind you, unlike the GTE class right now where everyone's still kind of close together. But James Thomas right now just dominating the LMP1 class. But guys, how quickly is he going to start to catch up to the back of this GTE class? Obviously, 8.5 miles ain't nothing to laugh at.
Yeah, be about 2 laps, I think, until Thomas comes onto the very back of the GT field. They're about 40 seconds a lap difference between the fastest LMP1 car and the slowest GTE. So, yeah, just a couple of laps till they get to the back of the GTE field, but it's going to be a lot of traffic to get through to get to these faster Ferraris up at the front.
Right now, though, of course, and actually, Carlos, that's for the lead in the GTEs. I'm so sorry. For whatever reason, I was thinking that might be for second, but they're already approaching the 2-hour, 11-minute mark here left to go in the race, and these guys using that draft. The speed difference here, we put that up between these two. It was about 175 miles an hour right before they braked into that chicane. And of course, they slowed all the way down to about 75 miles an hour as they go through there. So obviously heavy braking does go on here in Le Mans, but that draft, especially down these, you got several places, but obviously here down this long back straightaway, and you can race the layout on iRacing, and I know Peter probably has because everybody loves to do it. Devin, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. But one of my favorite things to do is put it on the classic layout where you don't have the chicanes, grab something that's high powered, like say NASCAR Gen 6, and just let it scream down that straightaway. And eventually you're topping out like 220 miles an hour or something. So it's no wonder they had to put those chicanes in for safety.
Yeah, it's you can't imagine what it must have been like for the guys like Derek Bell and people like that, and you know, Jackie X, and so in the Porsche 956 and Porsche 962 when they were hitting, you know, and actually the Porsche 917, I cannot imagine what it's like, what it must have been like braking for Mulsanne Corner from 245 miles an hour that you could get out of a Porsche 917. The braking distance must have been about the length of out of Sunset Boulevard. I mean, it's an extraordinary circuit, Le Mans, and interesting. Whenever I speak to real world racing drivers, and whenever I interview them, I always ask them if you could do any race in the world, in any car and any driver, they nearly often to a man select Le Mans.
And by the way, I will say this, I mentioned it, but if you're ever looking to put together, say, a fun race here and with a weird car track combo, I'm telling you, Gen 6 NASCAR cars is a fun combo here. But we've got a reco out there right now, car 22, excuse me, that's the Karma Clan team that consists of Felipe Gaucho and Kiko Alves in that car right now. That would be looks like Felipe Gaucho, but he ended up having an incident. Oh, once again through Indianapolis, back in, just wanted to come around.
Yeah, and that's a tough part in some of these braking zones. And of course, when you carry too much heat in there and you just throw that rear end completely out, there's no saving it after that.
Right.
Looks like sorry. So in the 22, Karma Clan car looks to have got away relatively unscathed from that incident. The car looks to be running pretty well and not any kind of physical damage on that number 22 car. Now we're coming into the stage of the race where if one of those GTE cars had to come into repair damage, which the 22 Karma Clan car has not, but one of the Ferraris has, this is at a point where you now can fill up and you only need one more pit stop until the end of the race. So even if you do get involved in a little bit of an incident now, a trip to pit lane is not the end of the world, because we know that our drivers cannot make it on one stop. They're going to have to stop twice at some point during the race. So if you have to stop a little bit early now, you still can get back into contention again.
Right, we're going to start seeing some pit strategy here, and I hate to ask Joe to do this, but we haven't talked about it yet, and this could be a story as we go through the day. I'd like to actually go get a replay of Tomas Monterio's car 42's pit entry, and show you how tough it is to actually have the pit entry here at Le Mans, and it can get very, very interesting in a hurry as we see him come off the Corvette curve, flying toward the Ford chicane, takes the pit exit, And see the car back there with the damaged wing. We'll look to see who that is here in just a moment. But hops that curve and has to stick the thing sideways before it comes back on track. That's another place that's very easy to pick up an off track, even on pitted. And B, it's so tight there that any mistake that you make, you're going to pay for it. And I've seen numerous wrecks right there, single car wrecks from cars trying to get onto pit road.
Yeah, the car of Thomas Montero, that Ferrari, the number 42, has been into pit lane and is back out and going again. So it's taken fuel. I don't think took tyres at this stage. Can get those at the next stop. But it's back into the race. Currently sitting in 35th position after starting 21st. So dropped a few spots, but back and running again. And just watch that 42 car to get back into the contention over the race.
Okay, so right now on P4 with the with the LMP1, Almeida having to hold off Albuquerque here. Albuquerque in that draft, he's got a head full of steam. He might have position here, and he does. He's going to outbrake Miguel Almeida and take over that 4th position. So Felipe's recovery drive continues. And obviously still a very long way to go here. He may be that, like I think it was close to about 27, 26 seconds down here, trying to look that up. But yeah, 25 seconds down. That's still a lot of time when we still have over 2 hours on the clock. So that is not done. It looks like Almeida was trying to come back on him there, but not able to quite do that just yet. That draft obviously being a great equalizer there. So, hey, one thing I want to point out, we were talking a little bit ago about that long straightaway. We're going to talk a lot about history and all this here for this afternoon as well at times. Actually, we'll hold off on that just one more second. It looks like Miguel's trying to come back on Felipe. Looks like he's going to be able to do it that time. And he's going to re-complete that pass. They're going into Indianapolis. They're both going to get through clean. So we got a dogfight right now for 4th position. But what I was talking about is that long back straightaway. Joe Peak, our director, noted those cars were bonkers even at 89.90 when they put those chicanes in, and that's right. If you want to experience that, go load up the Nissan GTP car with the old Class C, or Group C rather, and that gets to be pretty insane. It looks like Felipe is going to retake that pass going into the Porsche curves here, heading over to the Corvette curve. He's going to be able to pull just a little bit away. And might be able to get far enough ahead here with that. Actually, he slips up just a little bit going through Corvette. Trying to factor in that GTE car. That was a GTE car we were going to go back to and figure out who that was. That was Cardosa with the damaged wing right now. And they were having to navigate him. So that kind of took away a little bit of that time that he gained there through the Porsche curve.
Yeah, that's always the thing. That's the last place that you want to come across traffic is at the Porsche curves. If you're in a fast LMP1 car, you do not want slow GT cars in front of you. And this is the amazing thing about Le Mans is that we see multi-class sports car racing all over the world. It's not unique to Le Mans, of course, but the track layout, it's just how, Lady Luck, it just depends if she's with you or not. The Le Mans race often chooses its winner itself because, sometimes you see drivers just have absolutely incredible stints through the night. We saw in 2015 Nick Tandy running a quadruple stint through the night in the 919 hybrid, and that was really where they ambushed the rest of the field and went on to win the race. But everything has to fall into place, and if you just catch a GT car at just the wrong time, the margins are so tight now that it can really affect the race. But of course, if you come up against the GT cars on the straights here, there's plenty of room to get past, especially with that hybrid boost. But James Thomas in the Audi now and the LMP1 leaders, they're now having to start to make their way through the GT traffic as well, so that's going to get pretty busy for them, and we're still probably about halfway through these opening first stints.
And what continues to make things more difficult is that there are so many tight battles right now in the GTE class, and so what if you're one of these LMP1s and you catch up to a group of, say, there's groups of 5 cars right now trying to battle for position? That just makes things even more difficult. And of course, battles on the track for GTE, it's not like you can just, be mad at them and try to boot them out of the way. They're fighting for position right now as everyone starts to intermix, and it's only going to get more and more chaotic as this race goes on.
All right, so now it's just watching the the train of GTEs go by here, and the LMP1s now having to cut through the lap traffic. Going back, we watched Tomas Monteiro getting on the pit lane a little while ago. He came back onto pit lane and has retired the car for today. So another retiree here this afternoon. We do have a pass for position right now. Pedro Casal and Nuno Pereira were just fighting for 10th in the LMP1s. I know it's a little deeper into the LMP1 field, but that was a good little battle right there. Now we also got the GTE battle here on screen where they were cutting through. But give these guys a little bit of airtime. Pedro Casal, a teammate, looks like to Felipe Albuquerque, both part of the Sonic Racing team. So they are making their presence felt here for today with the LMP1s. And these LMP1s, they're one of my favorite cars on iRacing, and they always put on a good show no matter what they're in. And they're doing that again here today at Le Mans. And I know we've been kind of debating about what sounds better, the Audi or the Porsche. To me, they both sound great, and these cars are so meticulously detailed, they're actually pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is extraordinary when you go into the garage section of the iRacing simulator and the amount of adjustment that these cars have. And that's the thing that iRacing does so well, basically simulating all of those adjustments that you can make. And it's extraordinary. And the very best LMP1 drivers really, they are maybe, I mean, obviously they'll have the skill to drive quickly, but also they understand the complexity of the technology that these LMP1 cars have, and knowing where to deploy the energy, how to save it up under braking, all of these kinds of things is vital to LMP1 success. Looking in the GT category, we're seeing an excellent battle breaking out between the 999 of Dieguez and the 13 of Ricardo Ferreira, but we also see the LMP1 leader, 41 of James Thomas, having to work his way around in his Audi right now. But yeah, brilliant battle between the two Ferrari 488s. A couple of days ago, I was speaking to Rahel Fry, the Swiss driver who races with the Iron Dames team for Kessel Racing at Le Mans, and they raced last year to 9th place in the GTE AM class in their Ferrari, and she said the Ferrari 488 is a brilliant endurance car in particular. So it's a brilliant car for long races.
Yeah, and they drive really super smooth here, and I know from a lot of painter standpoints, it's great that you can paint a GTE and be able to carry that over to GT3 and vice versa, so they do like that. Looking at the board, Antonio Reese is another disconnect out there. At least I don't know if he was just kind of resetting before he comes back in to compete in the team part, but that's another familiar name on GSRC broadcast that's out there. So looking at seeing how things are shaping up, the one thing I've been noticing right now, we got a 3-wide battle here, and I know this is a little deeper in the GTEs, but go to Marco Mendez, Raul Quiroz, and Pedro Martins. They are 3 wide going down the straightaway here. They're going to try to get themselves sorted out. 25th overall, car number 3, car number 2. Oh, looking at that was Pedro Martins almost seeing the back end spin loose right in front of Pedro Casal and the LMP1s. Now the LMP1s here are going to have to cut through these guys. This is where it gets really hairy.
Got this long straightaway, though, here. This is where you got to take advantage if you're an LMP1. You got to try to get around these GTEs as fast as you can. But, man, like you guys mentioned earlier, when you catch up to a GTE, that's just when you have to pass them. And like I mentioned earlier, these GTEs are still fighting for position in these huge groups. If you don't catch these guys in a long straightaway, it's just so difficult to pass them.
It certainly is, Devin. You know, it's sometimes if you're in an LMP1 car and you see a gaggle of GTE cars ahead, sometimes it's best to just compromise a little bit of speed and let the GT cars get around a slower corner and then punch out of the exit of the corner using the power boost that these LMP1 cars have. That's how to manage that. It could be the difference of winning and losing. A big spin there from the big moment between the BMW M8 there when the two Porsches have gone past. Now that BMW M8 is renowned on the iRacing service for being a really friendly and comfortable car, which is exactly what you need for long races. The 911 RSR, on the other hand, can be a touch on the twitchy side. So if you're going to go with the 911 RSR, you've got to be concentrating absolutely 100% all race long.
Yeah, lots of people having handfuls out there. I just watched third place in LMP1s. We don't need to go to it. Have a minor moment through the Ford chicanes, and he actually lost quite a bit of time. And actually, Felipe Albuquerque got around him, so we moved Felipe Albuquerque now up to third in the LMP1. So he's continuing his march back through the field.
And speaking of the LMP1s, I've been watching James Thomas. It just looks like he is on cruise control. He has 15 seconds to second place. He has 35 seconds to third place behind him. And I mean, it just looks like he is just sailing so smooth right now, so early on. You can see, we've seen very few shots down the straightaway where there's essentially no cars behind him, whether it's GTE or the LMP1. Right now, James Thomas is just, he looks like he's on a rail, guys. He looks like a slot car at this point.
Very, very smoothly set up. And very, very consistent laps as well right now out of James Thomas. But this is Le Mans. Anything can happen. I mean, we're sitting here right now watching GTE cars being split by LMP1s. LMP1s have to take them 3 wide, everything else. So anything can happen here. But right now, he's got himself a pretty good base. Right now, we got Pedro Martinez and Marco Mentes back on your screen as they continue to run here. And actually looked at Rio Quires having a brief moment. Looked like the back end wanted to come loose in that M8.
Yeah, that was a big moment there from the BMW driver. I'm just looking at the stint lengths. We should expect our LMP1 drivers to be thinking about a pit stop in a couple of laps' time. We're on lap 9 of the race right now, and we expect the LMP1 drivers to have a maximum stint of 12 to 13 laps. So won't be too long, maybe in the next 10 minutes or so, we'll see some of the LMP1 guys coming into pit lane. The GTE cars, they have 15 laps, so we've still got plenty of time for those GTE cars to keep circulating.
So we'll be watching for those first round of LMP1 pit stops because, as we talked about, pit road entry can be a little interesting here at Le Mans. It's looking at, I'm guessing, and I'm sincerely apologizing for getting it wrong, pronouncing the first name here of Ree, fighting here with Pedro Martins. And so that's been a great battle here between these guys, pretty much almost about the last 4 or 5 laps. Is Pedro really going to go ahead and try to dive it in there, trying to take the outside going into that second chicane? He just cannot get that going for him. He's actually going to lose a little bit of time there to Pedro. And while these guys are fighting, I'm like watching Michael Mendez and João Magalhães behind them actually catching these two. So we could see another 4-car battle for positions shaping up here over the next few minutes.
Yeah, the GTE class just does not seem to separated here mid-pack at the very least. You still just have an absolute line of cars, and as a driver, that's so helpful to be able to see where you want to go. When there's no one in front of you sometimes, that can even be distracting. But when you have something to throw a reel to and say, I want to try to hook onto that guy and try to follow him, catch up to him, it gives you something to hunt. And the fact that all these guys in the GTE class are still, for the most part, in a row, it helps some of these guys probably stay on point here. Of course, we're still pretty early in the race. Ooh, Hugo Presto with issues here, 9th overall in the LMP1 categories towards the pits. I don't think he's trying to go into the pits, though. It looks like might have had some issues there off that last corner.
Yeah, it's been an eventful race for him, for Hugo Preto in that #1 Audi. He's got an iRating of over 5,000.
Actually, we need to go back to that battle that we've been watching here. Rio Quires and Pedro Martins just had a moment together. They got together, and Rio went into the Corvette curve hard into that safer barrier they have there. Take a look at the GSRC replay machine, and they go in side by side. They make a little bit of contact, and that was all she wrote for Ree. Remember, there are no faster pairs, And actually looking at it, there's a little bit of netcode involved there as well. So that's sometimes happens with the code as it travels through the internet, going to, of course, a little bit of prediction there about where things will end up. And that one predicted that they're going to make contact. And unfortunately for Reese, that meant contact with the wall, and hard contact with the wall. We'll see what his repair time is like here, as that is one beat up M8.
Yeah, even though there is no fast repair, drivers can still go into the pits and there is a repair time. Sometimes it's not all fixable, or sometimes iRacing says, hey, you know, for the next 2 hours, you're going to sit here to get your full repairs. And sometimes if you want to continue racing, you just have to come up with a compromise. How much damage are you willing to run with, as we see multiple damaged cars right now on pit road?
Yeah, that Team Mituga BMW now sitting into pit lane with Rui Fernando Queiroz on board. The car up on the jacks, taking the chance to get tyres. But I think that that number 36 BMW is going to be in there for quite some time. We've also got a Porsche in as well, which is up on the jacks, and it's got a little bit of damage to the rear wing. Just going to get a look at which car that is.
We need to get back here a minute. To the leader, James Thomas, car number 41. Just a moment ago, going through the Corvette curve, had contact with a GTE machine that was out of control, and he has taken it down pit road. I don't know if this is scheduled or if this is because of damage incurred, but this was significant contact here with your leader of the LMP1s. I need to go. Yeah, we need to go back a little bit further than that.
Car looks absolutely fine, and this is relatively on schedule actually for our LMP1 leader. This isn't too far away from his scheduled pit stop time. We're looking at currently sitting on, refresh the timing screen, currently sitting on lap 11. So yeah, this is relatively on schedule for James Thomas.
Okay, so we're having issues finding it here on the machine. So let me just tell you what happened here. C.E. Lopez in his GTE got off track going into the Porsche curves, put a wheel off in the grass right when James Thomas was coming around the outside. This might be it right here. And see, put a wheel off and just had nowhere to go but into the side of that LMP1 of James Thomas. And very, very lucky that that wasn't worse than what it was for them. And of course, C. Lopez getting on and apologizing for that, obviously. But that was still significant contact with your leader. And I do see the right side of that LMP1 a little bit dinged up. So we'll be seeing if that's damage that can be repaired as the race goes along here.
And just nothing that Thomas could do there except for try to hang on, and luckily didn't go for too bad of a ride. But like you guys mentioned, kind of not too bad off schedule here. It's more than likely going to depend on how long it takes to fix the damage. He had a substantial lead over the field, so coming out of the pits now. So we'll see how pit cycle kind of cycles through here, and we'll see where Thomas lands after everyone makes some adjustments and makes some changes.
Yeah, Thomas was in pit lane for a significant amount of time there, longer than would be required for a full tank of fuel. Of course, these LMP1 hybrids have very small fuel tanks, only 50 litres, so it doesn't take long to fill up with fuel, and he didn't take tyres. So obviously he thought, I've got a little bit of time in hand, I can wait in there, and any damage he did take in that little incident with the GT car, he's been able to get it repaired. But we know James Thomas has got a lot of pace, and he's already coming onto the Mulsanne straight now, doing close to 200 miles an hour, so that is obviously one very healthy Audi.
Yeah, so they were able to get the body repaired as well. Our director brings up an interesting point. I'm going to try to do a little bit of quick research right here. Is where is the battery at on those LMP1s? If he got hit hard enough, it could have damaged that, depending on the side it's on, and that could hurt his top speed and that battery usage as the race goes along. So we'll be watching that, and like I said, I'm going to do a little quick research right here on the side. But this is could be implications, but he does have a very significant lead, at least once the pit cycle completes and everybody else completes their pit cycles. So that could be giving him at least a little bit of help. Right now on your screen, we've got a battle between Nuno Henriquez and Manuel Vasconcelos, and they are continuing to go at it. These are team cars from Core Motorsports. So those should be able to give each other a little bit of room, but we've seen these guys already kind of fighting a little bit as well. So they're obviously fierce competitors along with teammates.
Yep, and that's, of course, that's promoted Philippe Albuquerque up to second position in the number 7 car. His best lap of the day has been a 3-minute 23.486. So I think he should have a bit more speed in that car over the course of the day. And in fact, he's just set that lap on his last lap there. So Philippe Albuquerque getting back into the rhythm of things and recovering from that incident a little bit earlier on. So expect the LMP1 field to start pitting very soon indeed as we hit lap 12.
And we're seeing the rest of the LMP1 crowd start to make their way down pit road. Here comes Felipe Albuquerque giving up that second position. Leonardo Marquez came in from the lead just a moment ago. He's sitting on pit road getting his service done. Alfonso is now on pit road along with, let's see, behind him, Miguel Alameda and Alexandra Martins. And Ricardo Martins as well. So this is obviously time for these guys to come in. And I just did some looking as far as the battery location on those Porsche LMP1s, and it is on the passenger side. So it is on the left side. So it's the opposite side that was hit. So that's going to help him out here just a little bit. Okay, so my mistake there. Thomas is in an Audi, so let me look. Looks like it's in the same place, so we're okay there. So that's going to be interesting there to see, but I think he's going to be okay as far as that battery is concerned. Looking at Yao Coelho now, he's going to inherit the lead here for a little bit as he's going to try to complete one more lap. And I know as far as a long 24-hour race, trying to stay out that extra lap compared to your competitors and do that time after time can have huge dividends. But here, this 2.4-hour race, do you guys think you'd actually save enough fuel and save enough time that can make a difference?
Well, I think with it's going to be really intriguing to see the strategy playing out. You know, we've seen the LMP1 cars go kind of to the maximum of their fuel load for this opening stint, which has taken them so far into the race, and we're just now around 45 minutes into the race. Around 45 minutes to go. My apologies. So that's about 40 minutes. So yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how the LMP1 cars approach the next stage of the race, because they've got to come in another twice. So, but they don't necessarily need to use up their whole stints. So there could be a little bit of action here in terms of who's most clever on their strategy. And of course, again, such a key theme in sim racing is preparation, because in the real world, preparation is so limited for racing drivers because of cost and availability of track and all that kind of thing. But in sim racing, your preparation time is unlimited. There's nothing to stop you putting in many hours of preparation. And for races like this, where you can do simulation and figure out exactly what your fuel number is and what your tire number is, the drivers that have put that work in are really going to see an advantage.
Yeah, and of course, I'm sure that there are guys who have simulated fuel runs, quite literally running races to see how long the stint of fuel can last them. And so I think that some of these guys might have a really good idea of it. But this is probably the last track on iRacing that you do want to run out of fuel on any part of this 8.5-mile track. And still with an hour and 43 minutes to go, maybe we see if you guys be a little bit more conservative right now in this race, instead of trying to push it and potentially run out of fuel, even just going into that pit road entry that we talked about, how treacherous that is. If you run out of speed there when you have to make that hard left turn, it's tough to get onto pit road.
Yeah, of course, now Yao is making his way down. He's going to give up that lead for as brief as he had it. Still, he led a race here for a little while and actually gets past here even before the start-finish line, just barely. So he never actually registered a full lap led, but he is coming down for his stop. We'll see where he shakes out. Meanwhile, as far as taking over the lead, it's actually Leonardo Marquez coming back out in the lead. So we'll see if James Thomas had a little bit of a problem, because James Thomas should have still been in front. Unless he spent extra. Yeah, he must have spent extra time getting some of that damage replaced. So
he did. in the lane 1 minute and 46, and Marquez in the lane for 54 seconds. So yeah, it must have been damage.
Okay, so he back out there. We'll get the pit comparison going, but James Thomas obviously has such a huge amount of pace here for today that it could be interesting to see him recover over the next little bit as well. So there is the pit comparison. Stop itself. Oh yeah. So that was over 54 seconds longer than what Marquez had. So there is your difference, and he's hoping he's going to be able to make that time up here as we go along. But aerodynamics are so important here at Le Mans that it's probably worth it going ahead and trying to get those body panels fixed.
And Peter, how hard do you think that you push it here? Because obviously with how much time is left, the fact that obviously you don't want to go, the pit stops are primarily for fuel rather than, say, if you're burning off your tires. If you are James Thomas, how hard do you push right now, being how far back you are from that pit stop, but still an hour 40 minutes to go here?
Well, it looks like he's pushing pretty hard. He's just done now on his first full lap out of the pits. He's done a 3-minute 22.0, which is a very fast lap time indeed. So clearly he's not having any problems with damage, and if he is, that's even more impressive. But it looks like his car is back to full health after that long trip to pit lane. So he does have a little bit of time to recover after spending that time in pit lane, but also, you know, he was really unlucky with that GT car. There was not really an awful lot he can do, but sometimes how you approach the GT cars and how you warn them that you're there rather than just blasting past them and hope that they see you, that is so important, you know, because sometimes the slower GT cars, if they see an LMP1 arrive in their mirror all of a sudden, they can sometimes, you know, perform or move quite erratically. So that is going to have an effect for sure. But I think we're going to see James Thomas really push and get back to the front. Also, just note the number 7 car has had a driver change. Felipe Albuquerque has jumped out of that Audi, and Ricardo Oleo is now on board the number 7 car.
So that'll be a significant change. We'll see what kind of pace he has compared to what Felipe had as they run in 10th position now, as looking at things starting to cycle through. So what we're going to do here on GSRC, we're going to go ahead and take a couple-minute break right before the GTEs start to make their pit stops here in just a little bit. We'll be back for those and more here on GSRC. We got pit stops going. All right, so welcome back to Le Mans in the 2.4 hours with the Portugal Racing League. Just to kind of recap, this is a team event, but it can be completed solo. So we are seeing some driver changes and the like out there. And we're starting to see some of the front runners in the GTE class make their way down pit road, including car number 13. That's Carlos Diegas back there. We're seeing the core teammates here of Nuno Henriquez and Manuel Vasconcelos, and I'm really apologizing if I'm messing that up, but those teammates are making their way down pit road and hitting their boxes as a whole crowd of GTEs is starting to come down. Hey, real quick, before we get too deep into that, we do want to go back and look at one incident here with Pedro Martins and the Grow Racing team. This was going into Masson just a few laps ago for him. He gets in under braking, and that car is going to go ahead and just almost shoot off there through the corner. So he's still got a little ways to go here. He's got that BMW on the inside. Doesn't like how things are set up. And it just kind of misses that braking point once he goes through the little kink right there before you get to the Mulsanne corner. And now Pedro Martins is one of the GTEs that is making its way down pit road. Looks like he has just a little bit of front end damage, but probably nothing that he's going to be too overly concerned. Oh, he misses his pit box. That is something to be concerned about. That'll probably cost him just a few seconds there. That won't probably hurt him too much. He wasn't in a tight battle for position. But watching cars now starting to come back out, including Manuel Vasconcelos. Looks like he's going to leapfrog his teammate Nuno Henriquez as they're starting to move through the Dunlop on the exit of pit road. So the GTEs is starting to get interesting with the pit cycle in full swing here, guys.
And it's never been more important to be able to maximize your speed on pit entrance and exit without speeding, obviously, because there were multiple battles across the GTE class that were only separated by a few tenths here and there, maybe a second, but down this long, legendary pit road, it is so easy to lose a second just trying to not get a pit road speeding penalty, and it's just a very tough way to lose spots that you gotta make back up on the track.
Trying to figure out, just saw something with an Audi right there. Trying to figure out which car that was. Okay, so trying to find it. I'm not having much luck here. We'll see if we can come back to it. But right here, there's still that battle for position with the core teammates right there. I don't really expect that to be too hot and heavy. They've been close to each other the entire race, but haven't battled too extremely hard. One thing I do want to point out is the LMP1 leaders. We haven't talked about them here in a little while. Actually, got the GSRC replay machine here loading up. See if we actually have it. It's Alexandra Martins in 4th position. Okay, we got to go a little bit further back. Apologies for that. Okay, so we are coming down the long straightaway, heading toward the first chicane. Speeds start getting upwards of over 200 miles an hour. Things get a little tricky there going around the Core Motorsports teammates as he had to kind of take evasive action and picking up the dirt there on the side. Okay, so and he just went off the track, making a bad situation worse, and he's actually going to lose a position there as he falls back to 5th position now on that trip through the gravel. So we load back up the GSRC replay machine, and you get to see that again here. There's Mulsanne, and that might have been another Core Motorsports Porsche there in front of him that I don't think he was really anticipating him being there, and lost the car under braking, decided to take it straight and into the gravel, and I think he bumped the front part of the wall. Don't see any damage on his front end, so it was very gentle. That's a high-speed trip in the sand. Yeah, so no damage there, just very, very light contact with those tires. Hey, and I was getting ready to talk about the LMP1 here leaders anyway, kind of give you a recap of what's going on there. After things have cycled through, after their stops, Marquez is still in the lead, but we talked about how quick of a stop he had compared to how slow of a stop that your second place LMP1 now of John Thomas was. And John Thomas, he led almost the entirety of the first part of this race, but he has now recovered into second position, and he is consistently running lap times a second to 2 seconds faster than Leonardo Marquez. So as long as he can stay out of trouble, I think he's going to be able to get back up there over the course of the next pit cycle, but it's going to be very interesting to see. But time right now could be the factor, and time is on his side there, Devin and Peter.
It is for James Thomas, but it's going to take, as you say, the entirety of the full stint, a full tank of fuel for James Thomas to get back onto the back of Marquez, which is just no easy feat. And of course, how the traffic is managed is going to be the biggest consideration there, as we watch a replay of two LMP1 Porsches 919 hybrid heading into the Dunlop curve. And of course, this Porsche 919 hybrid was incredibly successful in its brief time in the sport. Of course, it came into Le Mans Racing in 2014 amongst much fanfare, and didn't manage to win on its debut, losing out to the Audi of André Lotterer, Manuel Fazler and Benoit Treluyer. But after that, just went on a rampage, winning three Le Mans in a row, 15, 16 and 17, before the plug was pulled on that Porsche 919 hybrid program. But got Porsche to solidify their status as the most successful manufacturer ever, with 19 outright wins at Le Circuit de la Sarthe.
Okay, this is going to be another one of those moments here where I hate to ask Joe to do it, but if we can go back to C.E. Lopez's trips through the Porsche curve. It's car number 27 on his lap 13. It's going to be going back a little bit, but we just had the ride of the day here a few moments ago. And looking at C.E. Lopez, he comes back onto the track. Trying to find it here before I go on describing everything. And I know it's kind of far back, and if Joe, if we can't get it, that's okay. There we go. Okay, so he's going to spin off into the gravel, but then he's going to rejoin the track, and we end up going a little bit further back here. He's going to spin off. I believe it's coming out here. He's going to go through Indianapolis, or we'll see him here in a minute. Then Indianapolis, but as he's going through the Porsche curves, where we start to have problems. Oh, okay, so this is the Porsche curves right here. So he's going to go off into the sand, loses control, and then he's going to come back onto the track. And that's where contact is going to be finding him with David Assunção, who already, he was in second place, actually still is in second place in the GTE class. So implications in your GTE leaders with that 888 machine is he had to come down pit road again for damage repairs, and I think he might be, we'll see how long he's down pit road. I doubt he's going to hang on to that second place. But significant contact, C. Lopez once again getting on the radio and apologizing for that. But that's a ride, and I think C. Lopez's day might be done, where Pedro has now rejoined the track. He has fallen to, I believe, see where he ended up. I show, at least last time, he came third. Okay, so 19th. He has fallen that far down the running order with the GTE classes being very close and competitive. So that is, that right there, folks, might have been the ride of the day. Devin, what are you seeing right now here with this battle between third and fourth in LMP1s?
Well, first, going back to that crash, that is the reason why I don't race VR. But no, coming back to this battle right now in LMP1, everyone's starting to close the gap again. Although there is a huge gap, Marquez has a huge lead over Thomas right now. But as these guys continue to come together on this long straightaway here, drafting, trying to get around the GTEs, definitely helping out a little bit here as we continue to fight for position. We still have an hour, 25 minutes to go here, trying to move up a few more positions as Almeida trying to catch on up here.
An amazing difference between the 13 of Ricardo Fiera and the 999 of Dieguez are two protagonists at the very top of the GTE category. Now, interestingly, their time in pit lane is really, really interesting. So Carlos Dieguez spent 1 minute and 4 seconds in pit lane. Ferreira spent 1 minute and 33. Now, that'll be interesting to see if that was to repair damage or to perhaps take a longer fuel run, because we know that we'll see 3 stints from our GTE cars. However, they do not require 3 full stints, so not 3 full tanks of petrol. So maybe Diego's just taking a little bit of a shorter fill to get some track position.
An interesting battle right now on the racetrack. It's kind of far back now in the GTE class, but these guys are fighting hard. Let's take a look at them. Kiko Alves in car number 22, followed by Pedro Martins in car number 2. And of course, we saw Pedro a few moments ago having that off track and that little bit of contact there. So that's how he found himself back here, but they are fighting hard right now for that 17th and 18th position in GTEs. It's beginning to shape up here. Is obviously Kiko Alves. He's been able to hold him off, but the long straightaways here coming up in just a little bit might be the X factor. And you don't forget, you got Celio Mendez up in front of these guys, and they're the core motorsports machine. So this could be a 3-car battle if they're able to catch him. Kiko Alves, though, he's not going to be able to put on much of a fight here, as Pedro Martins hits a great run coming out of the Tetra Rouge. Down the hooded Aras, going into that first chicane. He's going to clear him before he gets there. And that battle is probably all she wrote, as Kiko Alves put up a good fight over the course of the lap. And now it's going to be Celio Mendez's turn to see if he can hold off Pedro Martinez.
And a textbook pass there, using the draft, move by him, gets there before the chicane, and now able to drive away. You may have just saw on your screen a new fastest lap of the entire race set by James Thomas, still trying to continue his charge back to the lead, but still a 31-second gap between him and Marquez. So it's plenty of ground to make up, but man, he still has that speed going.
And I think he started this this round in between pit cycles. I think he started at about 50 seconds back. So he's been able to gain that much already. But there's times where he's not gaining as much on Marquez as what he was before, but he's still gaining on the overall. That just goes to show how fast that James Thomas machine is here for today. And he's going to be a force by the end of this, as Leonardo Marquez happened to fight his way through some GTE traffic here. Goes ahead, and that's 1 cone on his marked list here for today as well. So the cone, sometimes it's fun to go ahead and try to hit that cone on the outside of Mulsanne. I will admit I've done it myself numerous times. So just a little fun thing to do. So you got a battle right in front of him as well there. Trying to see who that is. That's Mendez and João Magalhães, as they almost made contact. And now, oh boy, this is dangerous. This can be dangerous right here. I don't think João exactly knew he was there. And Leonardo Marquez, though, does get through that okay. But that got a little sketchy there for a minute.
Yeah, that was a little bit tight. And of course, one of the major scares as the leaders coming down to these GTE cars who are fighting for position. Almost what we saw happen with James Thomas, how he got his initial contact there. But man, that is tight racing as a LMP1 car right there.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want to see if you're the leading LMP1 car and you see 2 GTE cars side by side going into Indianapolis, and your braking zone is about 200 meters in front of theirs. That is not what you want to see. But Marquez handled that beautifully. That is really, really key part of the race there. Now, one thing we haven't mentioned much about, we've mentioned plenty about fuel, but tyres is one thing that we need to talk about, because I think that our drivers will only need to take tyres once during this race. So the GTE cars, they have, they'll probably, they will take them at their next stop. And there's one of the Audis going really, really wide there. That's the number 7 car of Ricardo Aleo, who took over from Felipe Albuquerque. But yes, the tyres, the LMP F1 cars, though, they need to decide if whether they take them on the next stop and kind of split the race in half, or whether they wait right to the end and make sure they've got the freshest rubber if they get involved in a wheel-to-wheel fight at the end.
You're watching Ricardo right now, and yeah, it doesn't look like he's got a lot of damage from that wall contact. That's good. It was a light brush, but still, though, that's not exactly what you want to see there in those LMP1s. He's able to get by, but now has to fight here for ninth position and try to hold on to it with Pedro Casal right behind him. Of course, these guys are both part of the Sonic Racing team, so they are teammates, so hopefully they take care of each other. One driving an Audi, the other driving a Porsche. So that's kind of what we're looking at right there. But to go back to Leonardo Marquez and how he handled that, and that's exactly how you need to handle multi-class racing if you're the faster class, is be very heads up and kind of know what's going on around you. And that's how you stay out of incidents, is trying to predict what those other cars might do. And he did that excellently with getting off the gas, letting things play out in front of him, and then making his charge forward. And avoided an incident for all of those guys right there. But he's also didn't want to see that because he's still being hunted by James Thomas, as you now see that gap there closed to 26.6 seconds. Hey, we looked at this battle a little while ago. It looks like he's back on with Kiko and Pedro. They're having to fight through some traffic. Looks like they both got around Celio. So that's that battle renews. I figured that Kiko might give up the ghost whenever Pedro got by him, but not the case. He's right back there.
Yeah, it's interesting watching these battles emerging in the GT class. It's so close. And one thing you've got to be so careful of as a GT driver is, particularly at Le Mans, is that at Le Mans you have quite a unique opportunity to benefit from the draft, from the slipstream. So basically the car in front punching a big nice hole in the air for you to lower your air resistance so that your car can travel faster, or to reduce the amount of power that you need to run at the same speed. So what you'll see, Lawrence Vantor, the factory Porsche driver who won the Le Mans GTE category in 2018 in the Pink Pig 911 RSR, and he says, you know, when you're behind the car in front, you have two options. You can fight really hard to get past them, or sometimes you have a great opportunity to save some fuel by sitting behind them, and then you can jump them in the pit stop by requiring to sit in the pit lane for less time. So that's something about endurance racing and sports car racing, which is always plays a big factor.
All about strategy, and that's one of the things I love about endurance racing. I haven't been able to take part in a long 24-hour racing in a while, but they're always fun to do, and a large part of it is strategy. I mean, you could be down 3 laps in the middle of the thing and still come back to win it, depending if your strategy is counter to somebody else's. So that's always interesting. Is looking at a moment here in front of our 8th place. Looks like our 8th place Porsche LMP1. I think Luis Monterio went off track right in front of him. All right, okay, so that Kiko Alves and Pedro Martinez battle, that is heated back up once again. I'm impressed here. Kiko got back there. He got a hold of Pedro Martinez and really just does not want to let go, and it's turning into a great battle. Oh, he might get, yeah, Pedro, I think he cut that corner just a little bit too much, swung out a little bit too wide, and got a slowdown penalty there. And now he has to get all of that back that he fought so hard for.
Losing two positions there.
Yeah, right there you saw he just went just a touch wide, almost out into the pit entry lane, and it was just wide enough that it triggered the slowdown penalty in the sim. And so he had to give up the ghost there and give back the spots to Kiko and Cilio, and now he has to try to go back after them. And that one took him a good 10-20 minutes to do, to get back up to that point. And it's just basically starting back from square one.
That's what we talked about earlier on in the show. You know, those track limits here at Le Mans can be really, really harsh. And if you do, may just tread over the line ever so slightly. Sometimes you can come out of a corner and you sort of wince and think, oh, will I get caught for that one? And then you see that dreaded black and orange text that comes up on your screen saying you have to slow down. It's the worst thing when you're in the middle of a race. I want to give a shout out to the number 39 car, the black, white and blue Porsche of João Coelho. It started in 7th place on the grid with a qualifying time of 3 minutes and 24.1, up to 3rd position now, and easily on the lead lap, and only just under a minute behind the overall leader, and running very, very smoothly indeed. And tell you what, there is not a scratch on that Porsche LMP1 car.
It's actually pretty amazing. Just about, I mean, essentially all the LMP1s that are still in competition or didn't have major issues, they're all still on the lead lap right now. And I mean, I guess in a way that means that you are still in somewhat a position to win the race, but still, Marquez right now a great lead, but an issue here coming way out. Luckily not going to hit the wall though.
Oh dear, that is commentator's curse. 101 there. There I was saying how smooth they were running, and the next time he's landed in the gravel at Mulsanne. A classic Le Mans mistake to just overcook it on the brakes. Of course, it's such a tricky braking zone coming into Mulsanne corner. That slight right kink, and the best thing you can do here is brake in a straight line, but I think maybe just got unsighted by that BMW there and ended up backwards into the gravel, but looks like managed to avoid the wall, which is important.
Yeah, he did lose 2 positions overall, though, but he is already coming back on Alexandre Martins. And he actually had a good run on him there before Indianapolis, but backed way out of it. I think he's still a little shy after what just happened there. Maybe seeing a bit of red, so he takes the smart move and doesn't try to push the issue. And so he does have to fight to get past that Sonic Racing Team Audi LMP1 of Alexandre Martins again here in just a moment as I go through the Corvette curves. And that's a shame, though. A little bit of contact right in front of him. That's Alexandre Martins getting into Luis Pedro Costa. Costa's going to slide off in that BMW, able to save it and keep it out of the wall is Luis. But the bigger story might be the damage that Alexandre, I think, just picked up on the front end of that Audi. Taking a look at it, and it looked like it got pushed in, but then it pushed itself right back out. We'll see if the damage model catches back up in a little bit, but right now I don't see any damage on the front of that car. So that might be a saving grace for him, and he ultimately didn't lose a lot of time. And Costa lost a few positions, but he was able to keep it out of that inside wall and keep it out of any more harm. So that could have been much, much worse for those guys, as they are able to keep going and keep going straight. The GSOC replay machine is still up once again, and we'll watch these guys here coming into Porsche and slight contact, and Costa doing his best dirt track impersonation there and the drift racing impersonation, keeps it out of that inside wall, so that's very good for him. That goes back to patience though, guys.
Yeah, there's still plenty more of this race still to go, 1 hour and 10 minutes. But yeah, even just a little bit of contact as that front end still looks okay there on Martin's car. But just that little bit of contact between the front quarter panel and the rear quarter panel, and that's how much damage it can do to at least your track position. So there's still plenty of time left in this race. You got to be careful as we have more pits going on.
Yeah, it looks like the LMP1 pit cycle is beginning yet again, Peter.
Yep, we've got the number 1 of Hugo Preto, who had quite a lot of calamity earlier on in the race. Now you see him on the on screen here. He's up on the jacks. That means he is now taking tires. Now his wheels are spinning on the jacks, it would appear, which of course is not allowed at Le Mans, and he would be normally given a penalty for that, but not here on iRacing. He would in the real world. And of course, back in at Le Mans. In 2019, last year, we saw the only ever privately entered Ford GT, winning the race, of course, on the road in the number 85 car, the Wins Ford GT of Ben Keating, Felipe Fraga and Jeroen Blekemolen. But sadly, that car receiving a penalty and more than 36 hours after the race finishing for a pit stop fueling infringement and also a fuel tank infringement of just about 100 milliliters. So sadly, the car was disqualified and now sits in Ben Keating's private collection and looks like not likely to see a competitive racetrack again, which is a sad thing.
So guys, let me talk strategy. We'll go to Devin first, and we'll go to Peter on this one. But the strategy here coming up, particularly with the GTEs, of course, they've got a fairly close battle, 24 seconds between them. But the middle part of that GTE field is just clustered together. Are you expecting maybe some guys to come in at the opening of their pit window to get them to the end of the race, or do you expect them to run their tanks dry? I think that's going to be interesting to see here over the next few minutes. What would you guys do?
I think it really depends on what the driver wants to do with his tires. I think that if you want to have the freshest tires for later in the race, maybe you go towards the end of that. But if you are thinking, I want tires now, this is the time, then maybe you go more towards the front of your window, because then you have an ability there to make up a little bit more room. And like you said, there's so much cars just kind of stuck in the middle, clustered up. There's a chance there where if you do take tires, maybe fall behind them, you can make up that ground with those fresh tires. So I think it's all about what the driver already had in mind of when do I take my tires and how.
Yeah, it is. It's going to come down to the tires. I think also if you're in that bunch in the middle of the GTE field, I think actually we've still got a long way to go in this race, as we see on screen the 26 of Martin's Audi coming in. But yeah, I think in GTE, I think if you're in a big bunch, there is no point trying to battle away in that bunch. In fact, you can be very clever and sit at the back of the bunch, because the drafting is so important here at Le Mans, and it's a great way to save fuel. And of course, these GTE cars all have modes on them where you can save fuel. In particular, the Porsche 911 RSR, the dashboard on that car gives fantastic information to the driver of how much fuel is left in the tank, how much fuel the car is using per lap, which it updates every lap, and you can manage it from there. But you can also adjust the traction control and, crucially, the fuel map. So as long as you can maintain the pace of the group, sometimes better to just stick at the back of the group and save lots of fuel and use that advantage when you get into pit road, because at the moment that is the only difference between the two Ferraris that are leading this race in GTE, because their on track pace is virtually within a second. It's only been the time on pit road which is causing that gap right now.
So let me ask you guys this too, and I'm going to tell you this sparks a memory. And I want to give a plug that Majors is running their 2.4 hours of Le Mans tomorrow night. And that's going to be right here on GSRC. And of course, they'll have 3 classes there as well, and set up much the same way, 2.4 hours, except that's going to be totally single driver. There isn't no teams there. But I remember a few years ago, we ran a 4-hour event for Le Mans, and Clark Archer, my teammate at the time, won it in the 4-hour race without taking tires at all in a GTE, and actually came away with just a huge win there, and did take tires at all the entire race. Now, they've increased tire wear in the GTE since then, but do you think anybody might chance the time to not take any tires?
I think someone who does is probably someone further back in the pack, and I think a lot of that has to do with over an hour ago, what were you doing with your tires? Did you maintain your tires, or were you battling, turning into the corners harder? I mean, if you've already worn out your tires more than average battling someone else, you got to get tires. But if maybe you're the leader or second place who hasn't seen a ton of door-to-door action, yeah, maybe you could, but it is a pretty big risk if the guys behind you do get some tires, and it does make that much of a difference, because like you said, the tire wear model has kind of changed in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I would be the same. I think one thing that's very important in these longer races is the lack of mistakes. Any driver who makes any form of mistake is always going to obviously make a compromise. I mean, you just have to look at James Thomas in the 41, who was involved in not his fault, but involved in a little altercation with a GT car, and that's the only difference from him having a huge lead to being 27 seconds off the ultimate pace of the leader right now. But that's the one thing about the tires. I would certainly err on the side of caution and take tires, because you want to have good rubber towards the end, and of course the more worn out your tires are, the more likely you are to make a mistake. Particularly, remember, these cars have to run to be successful at Le Mans, you have to run a very low downforce setup. And when you go through the Porsche curves, low downforce setup, it just feels horrible. So if you then throw in completely worn out tires on that, it just becomes a real balancing act. And for me, I would take the tires. Now, just on the noting, James Thomas, our former LMP1 leader, he has come into pit lane and he's now onto lap 3 of his next stint. And also the Sonic Racing Team number 10 car of Leonardo Marquez, that's the Porsche, he's also come into pit lane as well. And that gap still sitting around 26 seconds or so. So James Thomas is going to need another stint to try and chip away, because he only chipped away about 10 seconds on that last stint.
And I do also want to add, speaking on tires, that the sun is still beating down on this course. The track temperature, I believe, is still just shy of 100 degrees. Or it has came down a little bit, but it's still going to be pretty slick. You're not going to be seeing much grip coming from the track here as this race continues on. It's still going to be slick because of that heat and that sun.
That brings up an interesting point that, you know, it's still going to be a handful out there of driving. As watching now, it looks like Ricardo Aleo is coming down pit road here. Let's go ahead and take a look here real quick. Actually, at car 39, second place in your LMP1s, it's Joao Cleo is having to hold off James Thomas right now, and this is part of the reason why James Thomas's lap time's been kind of slow just the last little bit, been locked in a battle. But now I'm wondering if Cleo's getting ready to come down pit road. Is he could kind of just lets James Thomas go right there. I wonder if he felt like he was also being held up a little bit too much. But James Thomas, that should move him back into second place overall.
Yeah, Joao Caleo there, he's on lap 11 of his stint, so yes, you're absolutely right. He will be looking to go down pit road. And of course, also the difference in pace between those drivers, the best lap from James Thomas, a 3-minute 21.3, and the best lap from Joao Caleo, a 3-minute 24.5. But apart from that little excursion into the gravel at Mulsanne, Caleo has been pretty steady throughout this race. Be interesting to see in that number 7 car. Yes, that number 7 car has got Filipe Albuquerque back on board, so they've got their hot shoe back in the car. So watch that number 7 Audi to start cutting back through the pack.
We'll see what time they are able to recover here over the rest of the next hour. We're getting very close to completing this hour and getting into the last hour of the race. It's amazing. And we were talking about this in the pre-race as we watch Cleo come down. Also, we have that battle there on screen for, I believe, that's 7th and 8th there in the LMP1s. And it really is 2.4 hours. Once you jump in the car, even if you feel like it might be an endurance race, you've never gone that long on a single race in a quote-unquote endurance race before on a single stint. Once you get in the car, it just flies by, guys.
It does, yes, it really does, especially at a track like Le Mans where you can really settle into a groove. And actually, that groove and that consistency, that rhythm is vitally important for the drivers, just to really hit your marks. You know, Darren Turner, the Aston Martin factory driver who's won here multiple occasions and actually drove in a Ferrari back in 2004 with Rickard Rydell and the late great Colin McRae in a Ferrari 550. And he always said, you know, he says, at Le Mans, you just want to drive dot to dot, just hit your marks one after the other, braking point, apex, exit, and repeat. And that's how you approach it. Take it a bit at a time, and the time just falls away. Now, if I want to talk about GT guys, because now we're exactly at the point where those GT cars can get home. I think now is a good chance for someone to try and to really ambush the field, because most of the GT cars are only about halfway through their stint. But if you come in now and take the tyres, you can really get the maximum benefit out of them, while the rest of the field stay on the older tyres, because we've had an hour and 25 minutes. So get on, get the car filled up, get some new tyres on, and start turning lap times. I think there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, and in a way, whoever pits first, they kind of control the pace of the field then. Once one guy goes in, it kind of starts a spurt of everyone else going, ooh, now is the time for me to go in, maybe even earlier than a lot of drivers were hoping for. And so that's another good point there, Peter, about, yeah, you can completely change the tempo of a race by being a guy mid-pack, first guy to go in, take those tires. Okay, now everyone else needs to go. Now I'm going to fall off at his pace. That guy now controls the pace of the race for this class.
Yep, he does. Somebody like the 35 of Nuno Henriquez, nowhere near the pace of the two Ferraris of Viegas and Ferreira, who have been just the standout of the field today. But if he can get it, he took a decent amount of time on pit road last time out, so he's obviously he won't have to be in long to fill back up the tank again and put the tyres on. So you never know. We could see two people coming along to battle with those two Ferraris.
Okay, so hey, that's a lot of great points out there. We've got a lot of great more points to go. We are now 58 minutes away from the end of this race. We're going to be watching James Thomas, see if he can run down Marquez for that LMP1 lead. We're going to be watching the GTE strategy that's bound to be taking place here over the course of the last hour race. But first, here on our end, we're going to go ahead and take just a quick break here on GSRC. We'll be right back for the final hour of the race. Welcome back to the Portugal Racing League 2.4 hours Le Mans, a team event that you can also do solo. And we're coming back on a great battle here that has tightened up over the last few minutes in the LMP1s. This is third, fourth, and fifth, all occupying your screen at the same time, with Leo Martins and Almeida that have come together here at the tail end of this last pit stop cycle. Now the LP1 should have to stop one more time before the end of this race. We're looking at Martins. He's going to complete that pass with a great, fantastic run there coming out of the Touch Rouge. And that could very well decide third place right there. And of course, you got Almeida coming up behind as well. But tight racing here, guys.
Yeah, you absolutely gotta love when you come together with some other driver, close to another driver, I guess I should say. You don't want to come together, that usually means you're crashing. But on these straightaways here, being able to use that draft towards the end of this race, you're saving fuel. You're likely even saving a little bit of tire, not having to push so hard into corners if you're not side by side. But here we go, battle up ahead in the front of this group now too.
And this is the fun thing about these LMP1 cars is that when you deploy the boost from the hybrid system, the difference is night and day. So you've got to be following all the time what your opponent is doing, particularly here at Le Mans. It's no more important than it is here. And of course, that's what these cars were designed for, is for the Le Mans 24 hours. And look at that, the 39 car just blowing straight past the Audi. Now, that's not because and look, there you go. We talked about that so much. If you use that boost a little bit before the braking zone, you've got to adjust your braking point accordingly. And of course, that 39 car made that mistake into Mulsanne, and that's cost him. But yeah, we just saw the Porsche there just blow by the Audi, and that was all to do with the power boost. The Audi would have been able to blast straight back, and that, as I say, that's what makes this LMP1 racing so exciting.
Good news there for Joao is that he's still within sight, so he can still get back up there and compete with those guys. But he's going to have to fight a little harder to do it now that he's not going to be in their draft. But that's still a tight battle for third between the two Sonic Racing team members, and they've got themselves about 50 minutes here to try to settle this thing out and try to claim that overall podium and podium in class. And for the first time today, guys, it seems like the GTE class is finally settled down. There's not a whole lot going on over there, so we're going to stick with the LMP1s here for a little bit. We'll keep an eye, because we are expecting some strategy plays there in the GTEs. We'll see if that tightens things back up as we get closer to the end of the race. The other interesting thing is here, we can leave these guys here for just a moment, because I don't think it's going to get too hot between them. What we've been following with James Thomas's resurgence, and if he's able to get back up there and be able to reclaim the lead after having an incident with a GTE car earlier in this race. And so far here, after the pit stops, he is setting lap times faster than your leader, Leonardo Marquez. The question now is going to be, does he have enough time? If it's only a second and a half a lap, I don't think he does.
Yeah, right now.
I don't. Right.
No, go ahead, Peter. Go ahead.
Yeah, saying you're absolutely right. I'm not sure if James Thomas is actually closing it down right enough. It's going to come down to that last pit stop, of course, only about 20 seconds or so. The only thing that maybe James Thomas is going to have a shorter pit stop in the next round. So that's going to be something that's going to be vital. And of course, one thing he cannot afford is to spend longer in pit lane to take more fuel or what have you. So it might be that James Thomas has got to maybe he's got to do the no tire strategy. Maybe he's got to think, well, I'm just going to have to risk this and just have a go, but we're seeing a great battle here between the LMP2s of Martins and in the Sonic Team Silver car and the Sonic Team Red Porsche, the number 9 car. So yeah, it's I think GTE, the one thing that can spice GTE up is somebody taking an early pit stop here and fueling up to the end of the race.
Yeah, we'll see. With 48.5 minutes to go, Peter, do you think that there's a chance that you can go without a full tank here, try to tick off a little bit of time on pit road?
In GTE, certainly you can, yeah. And then for LMP1, what this is right on there. Well, we've still got a few minutes to go for their critical lap. You know, they've got usually stints of about 12 laps, and they're doing just under 3.5 minute laps. So, it's gonna be very, very important. I'm trying to do quick arithmetic in my head, but yeah, certainly coming into the next one, possibly 2 laps, is when you could come in and fill up and be fine to the end of the race. And James Thomas, he is the one who's been out there the longest since the last pit stop.
Right now, Diego de Souza, the Iberian, is on pit road. First, really, of the GTE cars that I've seen actually come down and make that stop. And I expect we'll see more here over the next little bit. But so that's going to be his last stop, his last trip down pit lane here for today. But saw him take tires, car 43, I believe that was him. I'm trying to, yeah, that was 43. He did take tires. So, a little close there in Dunlop. Oh, that almost got a little hairy there for him, Peter.
Yeah, that is not the place to be having an incident. Of course, at Dunlop Curve a couple of years ago, we saw, well, the incredible safety of the LMP1 cars when Alan McNish, a fellow Scotsman, was involved with a little incident with a slower Ferrari GT car and went off in spectacular fashion. And basically all that was left of that Audi was just the safety cell which kept Alan safe. And you know, of course, we all missed the look of an open top prototype, but really these closed top prototypes are a huge advance in safety.
And speaking of open top prototypes, if you are just joining us, you do see Murad there on the leaderboard for the LMP2s. He was going to be the only driver in the HPDs, but decided to go ahead and not take the grid. So we actually only have 2 classes out there actively competing with the LMP1s, with your Audi and your Porsche, and then also your GTEs as well. So that's the car classes that we have out there this afternoon, but still a pretty healthy 41 cars started today, but spread out between the 2 classes. With 12 LMP1s and the rest being your GTEs, as we'll battle on the screen right now with the GTEs starting to heat up a little bit. And of course, that a large part of the reason why that heated up was that pit stop right there. We're kind of expecting that to happen a little bit more as the rest of the race goes along there, Devin.
Yeah, we'll see how the cycle continues to go. Looks like someone got a slowdown penalty there from course cutting, but now we get these 3 GTEs who have been, for the most part, all spread out. Now a chance to draft, try to catch up to everyone else that you have in front of you, and having those fresh tires does give you the opportunity to have a little bit more grip. Then plus the draft, it gives you a little bit more speed and a little bit more power on entry and exit of the corner here. So we'll see how the pit cycle continues to move along here. Once you get one guy getting tires, it kind of forces everyone else to start making their own way onto pit road as well.
Yeah, I think you've really got to be. I'm surprised that not more GTE drivers haven't come in to take those tyres, because if you're going to make that investment in stopping to take the tyres, of course, here in iRacing, and as you would see at Le Mans as well, you cannot fuel the car and put tyres on at the same time as you can in the real world in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship in North America. So when you do take tyres, you have to make an investment around 20 seconds or so extra in pit lane. Now, for me, if you're going to take those new tyres, and bear in mind we're an hour and 40 minutes into the race, if it was me, I would have been taking it right to the ultimate, taking it right to that final stint an hour long, because if you're going to take new tyres, you may as well get the maximum amount of time on those tyres. As we another mistake from Felipe Albuquerque in the number 7 Audi. That is really unusual to see that from Felipe.
Yeah, and he's working on getting himself straight, and actually has gotten himself straight there. Was able to get onto that access road after taking the trip through the gravel, but not what that Sonic Racing team wanted to see. Felipe, though, when he's been able to get out there and put some laps down, has shown great pace, but just hasn't had it since he got back in the car. as that overall with between him and his teammate has fallen down into 8th position, ninth position overall. So not having the day that they were hoping for after really making a strong presence, especially through that first stint before the first round of pit stops. And that's kind of stalled out on them there. So looking at the rest of the field, trying to find another battle as we're looking at seeing the core motorsports teammates starting to make pit stops. So a lot of the GTE guys starting to make their last round of stops here toward the end. As we're looking at Carlos Dieguez, your leader in your GTEs. He's making his way down pit road now. Very, very smooth pit road entry. And it's agonizingly slow down this pit road, guys. 37 miles per hour. I don't know what that equates to there in kilometers per hour off the top of my head, but it's not very fast.
Yeah, about 60 kilometers per hour.
You're better at that than I am. I'll give you that for sure. But he hits his marks just perfectly in that 999 Ferrari. And just waiting to see how that's going to shake out. This is how I'm expecting battles to reignite in your GTE class. GTE has been very, very competitive as we've gone through the day. Guys, let's go back to your LMP1 leader here real quick in that 10 car of Leonardo Marquez and the battle that I think might actually happen between him and Thomas. If we could put the lap comparison on the screen, the gap between them is now 13.2 seconds, and see how that's been shaping up. And at some point, 8 seconds were lost there. So I'm going to go back and look here real quick, see if we can figure out that 8 seconds. It makes me wonder if Leonardo had a problem we didn't catch there, because that...
He did, yes. He did.
Go ahead, Peter.
Yes, he did. Mark, you can see that normally they've been running around the 3-minute 22 mark, and yeah, Mark is 3-minute 30 there, so he's clearly had a little bit of a mistake at some point in the lap 30. Now, interestingly, we're just switching back to our GTE net leader in the Ferrari.
I found it. We probably should go to it here. On lap 29, coming to lap 30 on the exit of the Ford chicanes for your leader Marquez, he ended up spinning out and making contact with the wall, and that was the responsibility that were responsible for that 8-second loss. And that's significant. I don't see any damage on the car right now, but he did bump that tire wall, and that could be a problem for him. James Thomas is probably like, awesome, I've got a chance now. But Leonardo Marquez, he might be having to fight for the lead here the rest of the way. I believe this is the lap here. We'll just stay on it for the leader. Actually, now we kind of went a little too far back, but I'm wondering here if we might not be able to show it. I don't have a time estimate either for that, but we'll watch it here, see if we can see it. This is a rare mistake. Leonardo has not made very many mistakes here, guys. But Peter, that's kind of where we're at right now, and hopefully Leonardo can recover from this. But James Thomas is now gaining on him leaps and bounds.
Yeah, that changes everything. To be honest, the gap was only reducing slightly between Thomas and Marquez, but that changes absolutely everything. And we're just getting to see as he comes into the end of the year. But if he's taken any damage at all, he cannot afford to give... Oh, my goodness me. Yeah, that's quite a big one. And just a little tap in the wall, so hopefully he shouldn't have any damage. But if he does, that is not what he needs, having to fend off Thomas. Now, just to mention for our GTE field, we saw the 999 Ferrari. Has been leading our race for most of the time, Carlos Dieguez. Now, he did not take tyres on that last stop, but the previous stop he took much longer than his other drivers, about 20 to 25 seconds. So I think Dieguez took his tyres on the first stop rather than the second. So interesting call from him. So he will be able to leap back again. So we'll see when Ricardo Ferreira comes into pit lane if he now has to take tyres on that number 13 Ferrari.
Hey, talking about, once again, Leonardo Marquez, I just watched him go through Indianapolis just a moment. We don't need to go to it, Joe, but he did put some wheels off there and lost a little bit of more time in the gravel. We're starting to see more and more mistakes from him. So that's going to be very, very interesting. As now we're watching the GTE leader, Ricardo Ferreira, here coming down pit road. We'll see if he's able to hit his marks. And looks like he had a pretty good pit entry, so got plenty of run-ups. That's good for him. Devin, GT pit stop's definitely going to be on the interesting side here over the next few minutes.
Absolutely, and for everyone in both classes, this is the part of the race where I think we're going to see more mistakes, where, yeah, it is sim racing, it's only 2.5 hours or so it's not physically exhausting, but this is going to get really mentally exhausting. And for these GTE cars, we talked from the very top of this broadcast how it's tough to get onto pit road here, but then also not having a speeding penalty as well. For the GTE class, some positions might be decided on someone making mistakes on pit road or trying to get onto pit road, or even we saw someone almost have an issue coming off of pit road back onto the track. And so mental mistakes, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of, and there's still over 35 minutes remaining in this race.
And you might have seen it on your screen a minute ago. James Thomas, once again, setting a new fastest lap of the race. He's taking full advantage right now of Leonardo Marquez's mistakes and doing what he can. And that gap continues to close down to 10 and a half seconds with 37 minutes left to go on the clock. Guys, we very well might have a battle for the lead in both LMP1, maybe to a lesser extent GTEs, but definitely LMP1 might be a battle right at the end of this thing.
It is. It's going to be brilliant. I mean, Thomas now really dropping the hammer. 3 minute 21.2. That's very, very quick. And interesting just to mention to our GTE battle in the Ferrari between the two Ferraris, the number 13 of Ricardo Ferreira, he didn't take tires either. So that's fascinating. Either he took them in the first stop, or he's going to try and do the whole race on one set of tires. Given that he was in the lane for a lot less time than Diego's on the first visit to pit lane, it could be that he is on the same set of Michelins as he started this race. Incredible.
And yeah, we were wondering if somebody might do that, and might have our answer there. That's James Thomas right behind him, getting slowed up just a little bit through Masson, but James Thomas not pushing it. Knows he does have a second place pretty well sealed up if he can keep it clean, but he also knows he has to run down that leader right now. Leonardo Marquez is sitting there with still looking at Ricardo Ferreira, and here is once again James Thomas. And looking out there again for a few more battles, looking at Pedro Pimenta coming in from the tail end of the GTE field. Other than that, I think right now the pit stops have settled down for the GTEs. Looking at Kiko Alves might be the one I'm looking at, maybe coming in at some point. 13 laps here on this stint right now. And that's car 22. He had a great battle earlier on with several guys, but that's kind of let go here for a little bit. Ended up with some front end damage on that BMW. Makes me wonder, of course, all the BMW M8s were always the subject of memes when they first came out. Does that increase if we push in the front end a little bit and make them go a little wider? I mean, I'm asking for a friend there, looking at Pedro Pimenta on pit road.
They cover a real amount of real estate, those cars, and interestingly didn't have much success at all in the World Endurance Championship or at Le Mans either, interestingly. And BMW, well, voted with their feet, to be honest. They didn't really get the balance of performance setting that they really wanted, as we see the number 41 of James Thomas in his Audi coming to pit lane now. But yeah, the BMW M8, not all that successful in the World Endurance Championship, and BMW decided to take their ball and go home, but it has had a little bit of success in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, not necessarily in the sprint races, but has won the last 2 Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona, and of course this year won with Chaz Mostert, John Edwards, Jesse Krohn and Augusto Farfus.
All right, so there is James Thomas. He did pull in just a touch short of his stall, so that might cost him a few tenths, maybe even a second or two. Now he pulls away, no tires on him, so no tire strategy there, seeing what he can gain, as we do expect Leonardo Marquez to be making his way down pit road here any moment now. And that very well could determine how the rest of this race turns out. Hey, one guy we want to give a shout out to, he had some problems earlier on. That's Hugo Preto, currently running in 5th in the LMP1s and trying right now to go after 4th position. So this is another battle shaping up, but Hugo has had to fight his way back through the field, and he's going to go ahead and make a stop right here. But here for the last little bit, he's been the second fastest car on the racetrack, and very consistently so, as continues to set lap times at 3:22, 3:23 repeatedly. Very fast machine. Makes me wonder what his day could have been without those earlier mistakes, but he's done a great job recovering from them here, as we look and see if he's able to hit his marks. It's a GTE coming in behind him. This is the first time today we might see some of the GTEs mixing in with the LMP1s coming down pit road with some of the different strategies going on as we hit the 32-minute mark now. Crawling to his box, and looks like perfect stop. So hits his marks exactly to start his service.
And with just how consistent Prado has been so far in this race, there is a chance that he can get up to 4th after this pit cycle is over. Was only 20 seconds away from there, as he was unable to make that pass. I guess that was for 4th. But so, yeah, an extremely impressive comeback here for Prado after what was a lot of issues. He's got those tires going. I think he just wants to peel off a pit road, guys.
I would not doubt it at this point. He probably wants to get as much of a jump as he possibly can to get back out there. We are waiting for their leader, Leonardo Marquez, to make his stop. He's coming around Corvette now. This might be the lap that he does it. Would not surprise me here. And waiting for him. And this is going to be the stop that could determine the rest of the race. If he does come in heading toward pit entry, will he make the decision? He does. He's coming down pit road, and he is hitting his marks. Very, very good in quick pit entry. Gets it low down to that pit road speed limit right before the cones. He's maximizing his time at this point. We're going to be looking for where James Thomas is on the racetrack, and where he comes out in relation to him. He stopped with the interval between the two when he came in was about a minute. And Leonardo is slowly crawling to a stop. Now remember, James Thomas ended up just short of his box. Leonardo, though, hits his perfectly.
I just want to mention James Thomas. It might well be a glitch on our timing screen, but our timing screen showing that he was only in the stop for 0.2. It is a pit. Okay, so, but James Thomas was not in pit lane for very long, and remember, he is just ever so slightly out of sequence by a couple of laps, so it could be that he needed less time in pit lane to fuel up, as we get the number 10 of Leonardo Marquez out and back up towards Dunlop, boosting away. Here we go.
Yeah. So this is going to be a chase here for the rest of this race. Is James Thomas might very well be in position, if he can keep the power down, to run him down at the very maybe last lap or two of this race, but he's got to be perfect from here on out. That is going to be a developing situation with your LMP1s, one that we've been kind of expecting that it might happen here for the last little bit. GTE cars, we are expecting some battles maybe to start up here after their last round of pit stops. So far, not seeing a whole lot on our timing and scoring right now, but we'll continue to keep an eye on them. But the story toward the end of this race might very well be how the LMP1 field shapes up. Devin, definitely kind of interesting there, and it looks like you've been kind of looking at some time on that.
Yeah, and we were talking about mental mistakes. That might have been a mental mistake for Thomas there, pulling up to his pit just a little bit short. And I guess you could guess that was probably about a second lost on pit road, and that's about how much time that he lost once he came out of pit road. It went from about a 9.5 second advantage for Marquez to about a 10.5 second advantage. So Thomas loses a second on pit road. Now he has to try to make that time back up, plus the extra 9.5 seconds, as we still have more takers on pit road.
want to give a shout out to Thomas. His best lap of the race is in another universe to everybody else. His fastest lap of the race is a 3-minute 21.234. The fastest lap of the race for Leonardo Marquez is a 3-minute 22.121. So nearly a second in their ultimate pace. So James Thomas in the Audi, in the number 41 car, clearly has the most ultimate pace, but with only 28 minutes to go and a 10.5-second gap to bridge, I think it's going to be the traffic with the GT cars is going to be critical. And how aggressive do you want to be to try and go for the win here?
Speaking of that traffic, it's another one of those ones that's minor. We don't need to go look at it, but Leonardo Marquez just didn't have to take a preferred line through Mulsanne. He was having to try to get around Kiko Alves, and that probably cost him a second or two right there. Every little bit could hurt the timing between those two guys, and really could hurt if you're only about 2/10 separated from the car in front of you. That's what we got right now with Alfonso and Prieto. Prieto is a guy that we've talked about being very fast here in the second half of this race, and really he's showing lap times that he'd be up there competing for the win right now if he hadn't made some mistakes very early on, guys. Is watching that side-by-side battle going through the chicane. Prieto not quite able to do anything with them there. Now they're going to go side by side once again, all the way down that long straightaway. They're going to get up to speeds above 200 miles an hour here. In fact, Prieto now 202, 203, 204. It just keeps going up. And these guys might be digging pretty hard at each other. Of course, you got Joao in that Core Motorsports machine, and Hugo in his own machine right now, the Ronin SimSport car. Just not listed on the team name, but that is a Ronin SimSport Audi that he's racing here this afternoon. Prieto, though, still showing he's got quite a bit of speed. He's going to take that position away. A little bit of lap traffic here to fight through over the next minute or so, and has a little bit more ways to get back up to Ricardo Martins, but he does have enough time to do it if things can go his way.
Yeah, it's just fantastic to see this battle going, really playing out between the Audi LMP1 and the Porsche LMP1, and I think it was a very short-lived era of the sport where these incredibly sophisticated and therefore incredibly expensive machines racing wheel to wheel with one another, and big manufacturers like Audi and Porsche, and of course, remember they're part of the same parent company, but quite a lot of inner company rivalry there. But of course, Toyota involved too. And I think, just we're talking about the Porsche 956 and looking back at the Group C cars of the 1980s. I suspect in 20 or 30 years we'll look back at these cars as a real golden moment in sports car racing. So it's great to see some brilliant sim racing drivers keeping that heritage going here in the virtual world.
Seeing Felipe Albuquerque just disconnect. Okay, so they handed off the car to Ricardo Aleo to finish this race. So that's why. For a second there, I was a little bit worried, but they do have some. Oh, Mendez! Seeing Mendez stopped on track. That's car number 28. He was running fairly competitively earlier on and was involved in a lot of great battles. He is stopped on track, or was, with contact with Magalhães. They were fighting for position right there.
Yeah, he's got a fair amount of damage there on the right side of that machine. Now just trying to have it to gingerly go across and through that little chicane area there. And man, you can already see, yeah, slamming on the brakes. Might have got a little bit of that inside wall there too, and now we'll take a little bit better look as we scrub on back here. Yeah, tight battling, 3 cars here going at it essentially.
Yeah, and it looks like Joao just misjudged that braking point, and unfortunately Mendez ended up eating the brake. It did not work out well for him, and I think he had to stop for a moment to get his composure before he tried continuing on. He has taken a tow and come down pit lane, so his day might be done, unfortunately for him. So that's a Core Motorsports machine that is now out of the Portugal Racing League 2.4 hour of Le Mans. But they still got a few out there. So we'll see where those guys end up in the overall here in about 23 minutes or so. Race is quickly winding down on us. Battle shaping up right now in the LMP1s. That's going to go to Martins, and Hugo Preto has already caught him. So this is going to be a fun little battle to watch here over the next minute or two. That might be just about how long it takes Hugo to get around him and on his own way.
Yeah, it's a brilliant battle going up, and Marquez is really getting reeled in hard here by the 41 car, the Audi. Absolutely extraordinary pace there. And yeah, Leonardo Marquez now just coming through Dunlop curves and underneath Dunlop Bridge. And yeah, James Thomas putting in a 3-minute 22.8 on that last lap. Leonardo Marquez at 3-minute 26. So a big change. We're now down to just 6.3 seconds between those two cars. So clearly traffic there for Leonardo Marquez to manage, and watching James Thomas there coming across big traffic of the GTs coming through the Porsche curves, but just sliced through with amazing precision.
And here for right now, and we'll talk about this battle on the screen in just a moment, James Thomas and Leonardo Marquez, there's no lap traffic between them two at the moment. It might not be here for just a little bit. So that'll be interesting to watch to see what time Thomas can gain. But this is the battle on the racetrack right now with Martins and then Preto. And Preto just showing that power. And I don't want to dog on him too much for making mistakes earlier on in the event, but you really wonder at this point what could have been for Hugo Preto here for today. He's got a very, very fast Audi, and he's fighting hard enough though that if things go his way, he might be able to gain another spot before the end of this thing. But he's got to have a lot of things go his way, as that next car up is about 30 seconds ahead. So. There's a good lap comparison right there. You kind of have the pit stops mixed in with that, but you kind of see that Preto does have a lot of pace when you compare him to our leader, Leonardo Marquez, on the clean laps. And see, as he just came across the line, and of course that was also while battling, is when he lost a lot of that time there too. So Preto, very fast machine. Unfortunately, probably he's not going to have a lot to show for it at the end of the day. I think he's going to come up short of a podium finish. But still, that fight up front is going to be the key. We're watching an LMP1 coming down pit road. That is Martins. So he's going to give up the ghost and come in for his final stop. We've been watching him stretch the stops longer than anybody else, and was wondering how that might play out for him. And the answer is, well, if it was a 24-hour event, probably pretty good. But the 2.4-hour event, it doesn't look like it was going to work out for him too well. As he pulls away, just getting that splash and go. Devin, are you seeing anything in the GTEs right now?
Not a ton going on right now. There is a couple of battles that's within, say, a second or so. As for the 20th overall position, 9th in the GT3, it's only about a 1.1 second gap right now. But besides that, cars just trying to make up their final chances here. That's about the closest battle on track right now in the GTEs.
All right, so that's a little bit closer than it was a few minutes ago. See some smoke there. Oh, third place car in your LMP1s just slid off the track. That looked like that was, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Indianapolis there? And, just hard contact. Catches that tire wall with the corner of his car, and then gets kind of high-centered and could not move once he got stuck, and just went straight off and whap! That's all she wrote probably of Cleo's day. Impressive showing, and that'll move Hugo Preto up to 4th. I still think he's going to come up just shy of a podium despite having a very fast car.
Yeah, about 25 seconds behind 3rd right now, and so, I mean, he's definitely had podium speed tonight, but Yeah, just a little bit too far off, it looks like. Do want to go back, look at James Thomas, still trying to catch up to your leader, Marquez. He is about 5.5 seconds behind right now. It's just a lot of room still to make up here, but we'll see. We still have just under 20 minutes remaining in this race, trying to make up a little bit more of that gap.
Yeah, James Thomas 5.6 seconds behind Marquez, so they're only 0.3 of a second on that last lap. So clearly the traffic looking a little bit more even there between Marquez and Thomas, but you know, it's going to be fascinating to see how this one's going to play out. We're now at the point where Thomas, for the first time in a long time, he can now see Marquez ahead of him. He will see the number 10 car ahead, and that is a massive thing for a driver. And how the driver processes that in their head, because they have to, some drivers that can distract them and they start overdriving, and other drivers, it just fills them with more determination.
And it could even change Marquez's way of racing too, because you might have the tendency to look in the mirror. Has that black dot gone larger or larger? And that can cause a mental mistake as well. So it's about, you have that 5-second lead. Actually, man, Thomas has already cut off a second since, just a few seconds ago, less than a minute ago. But Marquez has to keep his eyes forward through the windshield. You can't be looking back in the rearview mirror, because that is going to cause mental mistakes. And that's just going to give the race away.
I can tell you that now Marquez is close. Thomas is close enough to Marquez that Marquez can definitely see his headlights in that rear view mirror, and they will be getting impressively large. And it still has a little while before he catches up to more lap traffic here as well. And we mentioned that there was a gap between it, and so that may be even longer before it catches up to Thomas. So Thomas might be in the optimum spot here to be able to shave off more of that time, as he's just continuing to set impressive times.
Yeah, he really is. He's been the standout driver of the day, but it just shows you, Marquez has kept himself relatively out of trouble. He doesn't have the same ultimate lap pace as Thomas, but he's the one leading the race. So, just shows you just how important and how hard it is to win these longer races, because it's so easy to get involved in an accident, as Thomas did. You couldn't really put him to blame for the incident that he had with the GT car, but it's so typical of endurance racing, and sometimes it can be a cruel mistress.
And both of these drivers have had major issues. You remember when Marquez went and spun out, almost hit the wall into the sand. Well, that didn't bother him quite as much as what Thomas had. That wasn't even his fault at all. There was nothing else that he could have done there, but that's just racing.
And by the way, that LMP1 car that you saw off in the grass, that was Cahillo. And ever since he came off pit road, he has been in the gravel, he has been off in the grass, and he's got a very, very ill-handling LMP1 machine. So that's a shame for him after that hard contact with the wall. But Leonardo Marquez, they came upon just a few cars of lap traffic, was able to cut through them pretty good. One thing I was watching, is that this GTE battle with Saliba and Vasconcelos, and this might be the first time I think we've seen Saliba in the car right at the tail end of the race. He's going to try to close this thing out. And once again, with the Core Motorsports machines, these two cars have been close together almost this entire race.
Yes, and it's a Porsche GT car spinning behind Marquez. That is really going to hurt the number 41 of Thomas. That is brilliant news for Marquez, and Marquez will have seen that in his mirror as he barged his way past the Porsche GT car in one of the chicanes there. I think it was the second chicane. It was the 41 my apologies, the number 10 car, Sonic Racing Team Purple, making its way past one of the Porsche GT cars in the second chicane there. That could be crucial.
Well, the gap between the two is still sitting right at 4 seconds, so it doesn't look like it hurt him too much. Now underneath 4 seconds, 3.9 seconds. I think it's a 29 he's just getting around, and 29 slides a little bit going through that chicane. Does it impact Thomas at all? Thomas was able to get just a little, but I don't think he's still able to get by
away with
relatively cleanly.
that could have been a lot worse for Thomas. That would, in fact, ironically, if he'd been a little bit closer, he would have got caught up in that a little bit more. But Thomas really got away with that, and Marquez actually not gaining much of an advantage after all from that Porsche spinning.
Closing stages of the race now, sitting about 13 and a half minutes to go. That would give these guys, roughly probably about 3, maybe 4 more laps, depending on when they come across the start-finish line and how the clock of the race goes. And you think Leonardo Marquez, obviously he wants to have a lap shorter. He wants the short end of that one and not give James Thomas any more room to catch up. As that gap now down to 3.4 seconds between them. They can now be on the same front stretch. James Thomas knows what he's going after. It's going to be a win in a race that saw the likes of Murad was looking complete. You're looking at he's looking at the Clio again. That car is just, it's broke. I think he's just trying to get it either to pit lane or just try to finish out the day. But plenty of big names of both the sim racing world and a few real world drivers out there today, and come away with a win in an event like this is going to be very prestigious. And you can't tell me that Leonardo Marquez and James Thomas don't realize that, aren't thinking about it, because they are. They want that race win in a place like this, and that's going to be the fight here. This is going to come down to the last lap, folks.
And the lead is now cut under 3 seconds. I think Thomas might be able to catch him before this is all said and done. We have 12 minutes, and the gap is almost down to only 2.5 seconds. Once Thomas can get close enough to get a draft down one of these long straightaways, that might be just enough to get to the rear bumper with enough time.
Yeah, the draft is massive here, particularly with these LMP1 cars. But do remember that we can't stress enough just how important the hybrid power boost is, because you can really use that to your advantage to defend. So, if you're Marquez and you've got Thomas approaching you very, very quickly, you can use that hybrid punch just in the right places on the track to try and defend from Thomas behind. So for Thomas, for him, he's got to try and hold this, try not use as much hybrid boost, and then use it to catch up to the back of Marquez. So this is absolutely not done. They've got a lot of traffic to contend with. We've got 11 minutes left, so it's going to be interesting to see how. I think we're going to be probably 2 more laps after this one, possibly 3. So yeah, this is going to be a real grandstand finish.
And another potential thing that could change this up is how hard has Marquez been pushing his tires and his car. We know that Thomas has been 110% almost the past, hour and a half maybe. Marquez, he could have a little something here if Thomas catches up to him as he pushes a little bit off the end of that corner. Guys, the gap is down to a second.
This is going to be the epitome of catching him is one thing, passing him is another. Can Leonardo Marquez put on any kind of defense here against James Thomas? That's what it's coming down to now in an incredible recovery drive. Apologies right now to the GTE class. There are no active battles going on right now, so we're going to stick with this one. The battle for the LMP1 class and the battle for the overall lead here at the Portugal Racing League 2.4 hours of Le Mans, and it's shaping up to be a good one. A battle also, don't forget, between Porsche and Audi. You can't forget about that. That's the kind of cool thing that we saw during the LMP1's short but brief reign, is the pinnacle of sports car racing. Leonardo Marquez just seems like he's not getting through the chicanes as well as he did earlier on. But that right there, that was a 3:24.9 second lap, while James Thomas is still running 22.4s. So much speed there, but James Thomas, but can he catch him? I think right now, Peter, that if you look at James Thomas get a great run coming off the Tetra Rouge, this very well could be it right here.
Yeah, and of course the number 10 of Marquez now, just at the wrong moment, just coming up against a slower Porsche, and that is just perfect for Thomas. But then, no, Marquez gets past just in time. See, that exit out of Tetra Rouge is so important, but Thomas has been fantastic fantastic in traffic, and now he is right in the draft of that Porsche. And of course, with the difference in how different the hybrid power boost does, this is going to be fascinating to watch as they slipstream down, and looks like Thomas is going to make a move.
Folks, that was 340 kilometers an hour for James Thomas. It's a big mistake from Marquez. He cut it so much he's going to get a course cut. That's going to be the race right there if James Thomas is able to get through the rest of this thing mistake-free. No battle, no contention whatsoever. Is Leonardo Marquez going to be able to hang with him in the draft now? That's going to be key. Looking at the speed difference between the two, Marquez able to gain on him just a little bit. All right, so now we turn into a drafting game and a mistake game. Can James Thomas be perfect from here on out? I honestly think he hit his energy boost coming out of that chicane right there. He gained a ton of time on Leonardo Marquez.
And I want to look at your key word there, Adam. Mistake-free. We are coming down to the 8-minute mark. That's still a lot of time remaining in this race.
Yeah, it looks like Leonardo Marquez, if he has been given a slowdown penalty, it doesn't look like he served it yet, to be honest. So it might have been when he got stuck going through the chicane there, it might have been that he lifted off enough or maybe tapped the brake and then it didn't trigger the penalty. So he is still maybe... I think that the draft has now been broken already by Thomas. Thomas has just been the standout driver of this race. But all it takes is a few GT cars together at the wrong point, and then Marquez can tack on the back again. But this is Thomas's race to lose now.
And the 16 LMP1 of João Alfonso, it was going back almost 5-6 minutes ago, did have an issue going down one of the straightaways, got in the grass, it shot off into the wall, and then shot it back to the inside wall. That car is severely damaged, and he crab walked it back to the pits. So unfortunately, I think any chance Alfonso had of any kind of remaining contention is done. But still, battle for the lead on the track, it's stretching out. James Thomas he's setting sail, and he hasn't made very many mistakes here at all today. And I think, actually, what happened there? Did I? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so far back that was before James Thomas actually took the lead. So that led me to be confused there for a second. But there we go. James Thomas continuing to pull away from Marquez. Navigating the lap traffic there, Pedro Casal is the car that is in front of James Thomas now. In the other LMP1 looking to possibly go a lap down. Right now on your screen, you got your leader in the GTE class, that's Dieguez. He's got a 22.5 second lead right now on second place Ricardo Ferreira. The closest battle in GTEs, if we want to go to it, is going to be Manuel Vasconcelos, and I believe that's Pariah. That's only about a second between those two cars. And those four motorsports teammates have been close to each other pretty much the entire race. And they might be fun to watch here at the end when they decide to stop playing teammates and actually try to go for positions here. Remember, this is a fun race. This isn't for points or anything like that. So these guys, once it gets to the end of this thing, probably go at it just to kind of see what happens.
Just looking at the LMP1s, James Thomas is not having it his own way here. There, he came in behind really heavy traffic in coming into the first chicane on the Mulsanne straight, and it's not been easy for him to make his way through. Marquez still got him in sight here, so it's never over till it's over at Le Mans.
So there you go. This race quickly winding to completion. 4 minutes and 30 seconds now on the clock. I believe they are far enough back that the next time by, James Thomas should see the white flag to end the Portugal Racing League 2.4 hours of Le Mans, and at least send them on the final lap before they end the race. Fantastic race. There's been drama throughout. great battles. I think that's going to be the one big takeaway from this event here today is the battles that we saw in both LMP1 and GTEs. Lots of great driving out there, a couple of big hits. It was a very good race here for the Portugal Racing League on iRacing. Of course, this is a league that kind of spreads themselves out. They like to race on multiple different platforms, and it's great whenever they come over to the iRacing side of things and compete over here. And they put on a good show, and that's what we're seeing. But Portugal Racing League might be seeing an American driver take away the overall race win. Looking at Marquez, he has fallen now to almost 3 seconds back. And you got to give Marquez his due. He took full advantage of the mistake by that GTE driver earlier on, catching James Thomas. And he led almost the rest of the way, and he's only going to come up a few laps short from an overall win here. And but still, a great run out of Marquez and being able to compete.
Yeah, just that one spin is going to prove very costly indeed. But perhaps you maybe could say that Thomas had the pace to have made that gap up anyway, perhaps. But yeah, it's very, very impressive. And also, the cool thing about these LMP1 cars is the Porsche of Marquez and the Audi of Thomas. Of course, the Audi, completely different philosophy. It's a turbo diesel engine with absolutely enormous torque. 811 pounds-feet of torque from the diesel engine in that Audi, which of course no longer competing at Le Mans. But and then the Porsche, a V4 turbocharged petrol. And of course, they regenerate their energy in different ways. The amount of braking energy that is generated at Le Mans and that heat from the brakes put back into that, converted into energy and put back into the battery, and then deployed coming out the corner. These cars are just extraordinary laboratories on wheels and give great racing too.
Yeah, don't forget the Porsche. You know, they did the whole thing where they streamlined it even more and took out the headlights and this and that, and went out and set the record there at the Nürburgring. So I think that car is a very, very, very powerful machine, and always great seeing it compete here. It's nice to know that this generation of LMP1s will live on for a long time here on iRacing, and much the same way that there's just this performance by James Thomas will. And this is a name that you know, I've heard it before. I've seen him win races before. I think people need to watch out for him too, as an up and comer in the overall sports car just genre on iRacing, because fast dude, and he's always been quick in everything I've seen him in. And today it was the LMP1 at Le Mans, and coming away with, as long as he can complete the last little bit, coming away with a big win. And I don't think he's going to catch any more lap traffic before the end of this thing. So he's got smooth sailing. Let's check in on our GTE leader here real quick before we come down to the final run to the checkered flag. And he's also all by himself out there. I don't think he's going to have to worry about any LMP1 traffic or any other GTE traffic. So it was a hurried race, getting to about 10 minutes to go. And then things kind of settled out as the positions were decided for the final stages of the race. As we look at James Thomas setting incredible lap times, coming through the Corvette curves, heading toward the Ford chicanes. Very, very fast in that Audi LMP1, right past pit entry, under heavy braking. And today was James Thomas's day, despite contact with the GTE car earlier on that we thought might not come to a race win. Well, he proves us all wrong and comes away with that big race victory here this afternoon. Now we are setting the fastest lap of the race on the last lap of the race, by the way, 3:20.971, where the GTE class with Dieguez with a fantastic run for him as well. just avoiding the lap traffic, avoiding the LMP1s that were racing, going 3 wide at times down some of the longer straightaways, jumping those curves one last time. Dieguez is going to come away with your GTE win in class. Fantastic run for him over the course of a 2.4-hour race. Now that battle that we were watching between the Core Motorsports teammates, what's going to happen here? Let's follow this before we go, and we'll let Devin take a look at these guys here.
Yeah, still a little bit of a gap here as they continue to move on through. Pereira in 6th place. Caninos in 7th place, and these guys, like you said, Adam, these guys have just been connected essentially the entire race, but here comes a big draft here. This might be one of the last places to take advantage here. Try to not be teammates as much. Try to grab that final extra position if you can.
Yeah, Peter, these guys have been fun to watch. Why don't you go ahead and call this thing here to the end?
Well, this is just an absolute symphony here of one of the greatest sounding race cars ever made, the 911 RSR 17. Of course, when Porsche designed this car, they actually went away from their traditional rear engine layout and went to a mid-engine layout. And look at these two Core Motorsport drivers going head-to-head. And interestingly, a team called Core Autosports run these two cars in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. So look, as we head down into Indianapolis and towards Arnage, in the 23 car of Vasconcelos goes a little bit wide there, and that could be the difference as they head down into Arnage, and then they'll head back on the power bit where the Porsche is really strong, where traction off the corner is so important as they head towards their very own Porsche curves.
So that's going to separate out. Go ahead, Peter.
And through they go then. This is a bit where the tyres are completely finished. The drivers are probably finished as well. And they come around the Porsche curves for one last time, really on that tightrope. And they've got an LMP1 car coming up behind them. So, but it looks like Pereira is going to take it in this little inter-team battle between the Core Motorsports guys.
They come across the line into the Dunlop curves one last time. LMP1 kind of breaking them up just a little bit, but I really don't think it was going to be much of a fight anyway. Right at the tail end of this thing, teammates will finish next to each other in class. So with that, that is going to go ahead and wrap up the actual racing action here at Le Mans. When we come back, we'll go ahead and talk to a few of the drivers as they come in the interview room, run down the finishing order, and just kind of recap a very exciting 2.4 hours at Le Mans. We'll be right back on GSRC. Well, the Portugal Racing League put on a whale of a show for the 2.4 hour of Le Mans special event here today, and had several big names out there, including likes of Felipe Albuquerque, and a lot of the big names as far as in the Portuguese racing world. But overall, a Northwest Club driver ends up coming away with the win. The overall win, the LMP1s, and a fantastic show, by the way, between him and Leonardo Marquez. Do not let that 8.5-second difference between them two fool you, because it could have gone either way at several points during this event, and it ultimately came down to James Thomas having to run him down, and that he did. So James Thomas coming away with the overall win. Leonardo Marquez coming home in second to round out the podium in your LMP1s. It's going to go to Alexandre Martins. Hugo Preto, though, if he hadn't made a few mistakes earlier on, and I don't want to harp on the mistakes, but he could have been up there definitely in that podium spot, if not contending for the win here for the very, very fast second half of this race. Ricardo Martins in fifth. Pedro Casal finishing a lap off the pace in sixth. Miguel Almeida coming home in seventh. Ricardo Alio teaming up with Felipe Albuquerque coming home in eighth. Ninth is going to go to Nuno Castro Pereira. And probably the heartbreak of the day after being in the top five of this thing, João Cleo coming home in 10th, crabbing the car around and just trying to recover the rest of that one.
João Alfonso comes home in 11th, the final of the LMP1s. And then your winner of the GTE category, Carlos Dínguez, takes the win. Ricardo Faria comes home in second, and rounding out the podium in GTE was Nuno Henriquez. 15th overall goes to Hugo Brandao. 16th overall to Flavio Satrino. 17th overall to Tigo Neves Paria. Manuel Vasconcelos comes home 18th. Diago Paisolipe comes home in 19th. And Diago de Souza comes home in 20th.
In 21st position was the Core Motorsports driver, the number 3 car of Marco Mendes. In 22nd, the 38 car of Luis Pedro Costa. In 12th position in class was the Team Joao Filho driver in the 21 car. In 24th position was the 888 of David Assunção. In 25th overall was the Carmaclan car of Felipe Gaucha. In 26th position was the Core Motorsports car of Celio Mendes. 27th was the Core Motorsports car of Antonio Pies. 28th was Ricardo M. Cardozo. 29th was Pedro de Souza. And 30th, Michael Mendes.
Of course, the rest on back, not having the days they wanted to have, or getting caught up in incidents, and there's a few names on there you might recognize, either from the real world or other GSRC broadcasts, including like Antonio Reese having problems very early on in this one, and then a few guys that also did not take the green flag here this afternoon. So overall, once again, a fantastic race. I do not see anybody in the ready for interview room, so I'm going to go around the table here just real quick and just get some quick final thoughts from the guys. We'll do Peter first on this one. Peter, final thoughts from you.
Well, I have to say that was just a pleasure to call that race. I have to say I love multi-class sports car racing anyway, and really Le Mans is the ultimate. People, when I see people get excited about Christmas, well, I get excited when it comes to the middle of June and it's Le Mans time. And of course, we're going to have to wait until September for the real world Le Mans, but over the next couple of weeks, there's going to be so much activity on this circuit in the sim racing world with, as we saw, people like Felipe Albuquerque, who competes in the race in the real world as well. We saw him in the race today in an Audi. So it is just such a unique venue, isn't it, Le Mans? The track is so special. It's not just the heritage, it is just an amazing circuit. And to see these LMP1 cars battling away today was fantastic. So it was a joy to call that Portugal Racing League race with you guys. What did you guys see out there?
Yeah, it was great to have Portugal Racing League broadcasting with us. It's great to be able to watch this race and call the race. But the one thing that will probably stick with me is James Thomas's just composure, having that early mistake. And ever since that mistake, I mean, he was almost flawless and being able to go that over hour and a half and just pounding it down, using up those tires, using up that car, making his way back up to the front, and ends up taking the win. Just a phenomenal effort from him. And then also, man, those GTEs had some really fun moments in that race, a huge amount of cars in that class. And towards the end, there's all started to kind of peel away from each other and started to spread out, but still phenomenal racing in both classes tonight, and great to have this league or this series here on GSRC.
And of course, I'll echo those thoughts. A great run, great finish, and just exciting, especially in the last hour of this one. So with that, we're going to go ahead and close up shop here for today. Thanks to the Portugal Racing League for organizing today's Le Mans 2.4-hour event and contracting with GSRC to broadcast it. Thanks to the companies, equipment, and software that you see on the screen now that we use for our broadcast. The original music that makes GSRC sound like GSRC is thanks to June Lalonde. You can see the screen there for contact information for her. And on screen now are also some more upcoming broadcasts. So check those out and mark them down in your calendar. And another exciting 2.4-hour event coming up tomorrow night for the major series. We'll be right back here. And if you'd like more information about GSRC, including a complete list of future broadcasts, you can find it all at www.globalsimracingchannel.com. We're also on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at /Global Sim Racing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC Graham. And while you're there, if you haven't done yet, subscribe to the GSRC channel and be able to catch more great and fun broadcasts. And if you're looking for a person who has everything, go check out our merchandise store at gsrc.storenvy, and that's only with 1e.com. Finally, on behalf of the entire crew, Devin, Peter, Joe, and Dougie, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Have a good evening, good rest of the day, no matter where you are in the world. Stay safe and stay healthy.